to an end. Yep. Siti Muga, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Correctly put. Just like that. In fact, when you get to November, I start thinking of January.
Already, yeah?
Yeah, because December usually is jam-packed. It doesn't matter how, whichever way you look at it.
It just flies.
It flies. It's jam-packed with all manner of things. So this year has actually come to an end.
Just like that, you know? And if you just think about, just the other day it was March, and we were looking at March 13th, COVID-19 in the country, and November or the end of the year was looking like, it's a very far off time and place. And here we are.
Exactly. And then if you look at the time when we first encountered COVID and now, the question that actually comes to mind is, what is this big thing? Quite aside from just the experience of COVID and what we've now come to know about it that we didn't, what are the changes that it has brought onto our lives?
Yeah.
And then with these changes, do we see a time when there'll be a reversal in trends, there'll be a reversal in fortune? Do we see a time when we will have come to terms with the disease and we'll simply live with it like we live with other diseases like malaria, HIV, TB? And if we do, what exactly will have happened for us to get to that particular stage? And what harm or what havoc will the disease have wreaked before we actually get to that particular point?
And very many questions. Actually, it's imagine that there's a lot. Well, it's always been there that there's a lot that we don't know about it. But now COVID is coming closer and closer to the communities in terms of people now changing their belief and knowing that there's COVID indeed, and that COVID is dangerous and what it can do. Very many people now still increasingly talking about knowing somebody who has been admitted because of COVID, or knowing someone who has had that very serious flu that clearly was COVID-like.
And there are schools, again, who had actually opened their doors to allowing students to come back with the designated classes that the ministry had agreed, who, again, I believe with the consultation of the ministry, have closed schools again, simply because they're looking at the rising numbers.
Yeah.
And yet again, there's still discussion that perhaps there's need to open up schools so that every child who is of school going in manages to go to school. These are difficult discussions, but they must be had.
Yeah.
And the reality and the decisions that have to be made about them, difficult as it may seem, they have to be made.
When the schools are closing, are they closing temporarily? Are they saying like, we're just shutting down for 2 weeks and then reopen? And what are the reopening protocols?
That I'm not certain about. You see, why I'm not certain is because there is what was said before and what was documented as having been stated, and then there's what the conversation that is taking place now about what the... Let me quote what has been said about the CS of education. Specifically, yes, parents, you have spoken and we can hear you. All right?
Yep.
And the hearing has to do with parents apparently suggesting or insisting that all children should go back to school. All right? Now, this one is not difficult to understand. Parents feel children are losing out, and that it is important for them. And many probably are weighing it and balancing it against the odds of simply staying at home, and they're figuring they might as well go back to school. But this is now where informed decision-making process takes place. This is where the brain trust and all the other people who are experts in their field have to come in and offer them not just plausible, but the safest and the most balanced of suggestions or, should say, way forward messages.
It's difficult conversations to be had.
Yes.
But they must. I mean, we can't run away from them. We must have them.
They are difficult times anyway. So the difficult conversations are a sign of the times in which we're now living in. COVID isn't going to go away tomorrow or next week. It's not going to go away even next year. So our decision-making process has to take these things into account.
Indeed. So welcome to the show. Today we'll have a number of conversations. We'll be discussing, there's apparently a business opportunity that has been there in the country, even in Africa and in other parts of the world for quite some time. I only heard about it this weekend. That's how slow or maybe business unsavvy I am. This is called Crowd One, where people, put in some money and they get some returns or they expect some returns. A number of times, actually, after hearing about it over the weekend, that's when I see, we've even had it covered in the newspapers and in the news. The Capital Markets Authority, the Central Bank of Kenya, and others have cautioned people against investing in such. The COMESA trade body has already also issued its own caution against people investing in such business ventures. So we'll be speaking to a BBC journalist because the BBC Africa Eye has released a new investigation report that's actually going out today, and this is called Unmasking the Pyramid Kings, Crowd One. We'll be speaking with the journalist who did this story, and her name is Ayanda Charlie. She is in South Africa. She'll be joining us in the 7 o'clock hour to look at this matter. And then in 8 o'clock, there's a new term that's now being brought into COVID-19 management and treatment, and this is circuit breaker. Ile stima. So circuit breaker, stima, is that gadget that's usually there, like at the power box in the house, where in case there's an issue with lighting.
Okay, there's a surge.
If there's a surge in light, not just a surge, if there's an issue in lighting, maybe there's even a short circuit somewhere among the utensils that you're using, then the circuit breaker will basically just go off. So it cuts off power supply to that line. It's lighting or sockets, or some of them now will go into the heavy equipment, specifically going into things like the washing machines and such. So some and cookers, depending on the current that they consume. So this circuit breaker conversation, then we're gonna have it because it's been brought into COVID-19. What is circuit breaking in COVID-19 management? We'll be joined by Dr. Mercy Korir and Dr. Gedenji Gitahi. Dr. Gitahi is a CEO of Amref Health Africa, and Dr. Mercy Korir, you know her. She is a Standard Group editor in charge of health and science. So we'll have that conversation at 8 o'clock, looking at how we're managing COVID-19. But first, let's look at the numbers, as we always do when we start the show. Looking at the numbers in the country, latest announcement made yesterday by the Ministry of Health, we're looking at the total number of cases now at 55,877 in the country. Yesterday, the number of confirmed cases, the freshly confirmed cases, was 685 out of 4,433 samples tested, but 17 people died between Saturday and between Friday and Saturday. 17 people are died, and those that are admitted in hospital, 1,271. Those under home-based care, a majority of the cases are on home-based care, 4,808, and patients in ICU, 53. Sadly, 1,013 people have so far died from COVID-19. This number, if you just look at the beginning of October, we were saying we had 700, now the number of 700. So in about 30 or 40 or so days, we have had over 300 people dying from COVID-19. This is a very high number within a very short time, if you look at that. So we'll look at that and those kind of numbers. Positivity rate as of 1st of November, yesterday, 15.4%. On Saturday, it was 18.2%. And the numbers coming out on Friday, it was 12%. Thursday, it was 15%. So we're playing in the double digits. But on October 27th, the positivity rate was 20% at 836 new cases from 4,076 samples tested. That is a very high positivity rate as well, considering that by the time the president was relaxing measures on the 28th of September, we were at 4.3% positivity rate. Around the world, 46,810,000 cases, 1.2 million deaths so far, and 33,754 recovered. Now let's look at the number of closed cases here. So out of the 1.2 million deaths so far, that's a 3% death rate from this disease. 97% recovery rate, which is still showing you that the recovery rate is pretty good at 97%. Yes. The death rate is still pretty low at 3% if you consider now the other diseases. Things like MERS and SARS, which had very high death rates. This one is still at very low rate, but it spreads very fast. That's the other difference. USA is still at 9.4 million cases, total number of cases, and 236,000 total deaths. Mexico has had 142 new deaths within the last couple of hours. 142 new deaths within the last 24 hours. 404,430 new cases confirmed. If you look again at India, which comes in second, just below the USA in terms of total number of cases, 8.2 million cases and 122,000 deaths. Still, the death per 1 million population, India is still low. It's 89 deaths for every 1 million people. If you compare that to Mexico, which is 1,042 deaths for every 1 million people. 89 and 1,042. Then compare that as well with Belgium, which is now doing not so well in Europe. Belgium, 1,000 deaths for every 1 million people population. Total number of cases in Belgium, 429 from a population of 11.6 million. And 11,625 deaths from a population of 11.6 million. Belgium also not doing so good. Then the other countries that are still also reporting very high death rates as well. Ecuador at 715 deaths per 1 million population. Total number of people who've died in Ecuador is 12,000 from a population of 17 million people. The ones that are also doing very well in terms of low death rate is Japan. Japan, with a population of 126 million, they have 1,766 deaths. 1,766 deaths. Total cases in Japan so far, 101,000. 146. They are at 100,000 cases. Positivity rate, death rate per 1 million population, 14 people per 1 million death rate. But of course, we know the lowest of them all is always going to be China.
Yes.
Which is at three deaths per 1 million population. Population of 1.4 billion people. They have tested 160 million samples. They have found 86,000 positive cases from 160 million samples. And the number of new cases within the last 24 hours is 24. Total deaths so far, 4,634. So Belgium, we'll look at Belgium and what's happening in Belgium. There's something there that's going on. What is it?
The thing about COVID, if you want to look at commonalities, ask yourself the trends that countries have been following throughout the world. At least, let's talk about Europe. One, you see the numbers, you have some form of lockdown. Mild, you have a reprieve here, you allow this and the other. But now with the surge that we've been talking about, suddenly, whatever freedoms, whatever leeways that had been provided have been seen to be part of the cause of the sudden surge. So it's like they're going back to factory settings. Let us lock down again. But then the problem with the locking down is you may pronounce it, but it's not as though it's instantaneous. And with some of these countries, a little debate is also necessary before you can actually enact it. It isn't as though it's pronounced today and it's effected tomorrow. So while you're still trying to find a middle ground, the virus, unfortunately, doesn't follow that particular memo. It just continues doing what it had decided to do.
Wow.
And so as a result of that, the numbers will keep soaring. But also, remember, one thing that is clearly linked to these numbers in many countries is the number of testings that they're doing. Because with the increase in testing, they are finding more people who are positive than they had before. That's number one. Number two, then there's the issue of the weather. It's getting colder and colder in Europe.
Yep.
Yes. Now, the peculiarity of Belgium can only be the same peculiarity that we could argue we saw in Spain, we saw in Portugal, we saw in Italy. Okay, we tried to give reasons. The people tried to explain it. But even when what had been the explanation was resolved, the numbers didn't suddenly go down. And then at some point, the numbers evened out. So it's like there's a consistency in which they approach the matter, and that's what bore fruit. The UK has numbers surging in ways that they had not anticipated. So they're now having, it's not even circuit breaker. This one is like they want to demolish the circuit. They're taking very, very firm steps to ensure that this doesn't happen.
Imekatiwa kwa transformer.
Kabisa. In fact, they want to fell down that whole thing which ambayo inashika wire. So, what is certain is this. The surge in COVID in some of these countries around the world was unprecedented. they may have thought that there would be a second wave, but not in the numbers that they are seeing.
Not with this intensity.
No.
We'll have more of that conversation in the 8 o'clock hour when we're joined by Dr. Githenji Gitahi and Dr. Mercy Korir to discuss this circuit breaker conversation. It's now 16 minutes after 6. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. The live stream is up, Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter, and spicefm.co.ke. We'll be looking at who's online and saying good morning to you all.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
It has been a tough year for your business, hasn't it? But you hung in there. You pressed on. You persevered. And now it's time to rise up. It's time to get ready, to get going, to get selling. And Google is here to help you rise up. Get free training and tools to help your businesses adapt and grow online. Visit g.co/Grow Africa to start now.
The Nairobi City County Government would like to inform the public that His Excellency Governor Mike Sonko has extended the waiver on house rent payable to the county by 6 months. The move is aimed at cushioning Nairobi residents who are tenants in the Nairobi City County government houses and are still recovering economically from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Nairobi has been the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya, with thousands of residents consigned to economic challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Nairobi City remains the city of choice to invest, work, and live in.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo-soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening
Good morning,
to
Nairobi.
Spice
16
FM.
degrees. Well, it's been a very cold evening. It's going to rise to 24 degrees later in the day and 16 degrees coming back at night. But expect some partly sunny skies today in Nairobi. Let's go to Nakuru and see what's happening in Nakuru. Light rain is expected during the day, highs of 23, and skies will be partly cloudy later in the evening with lows of 14 degrees. In Nyeri, currently at 15 degrees. That's a very cold morning in Nyeri. We're waking up to light rain is expected during the day, highs of 22 and lows of 14 later on in the day and at night. Eldoret is currently at 13 degrees, expecting partly sunny skies, highs of 23 and lows of 13 in Eldoret. Kisumu is currently at 19, that's warming up very nicely. Partly sunny skies throughout the day. It's going to rise to 29 degrees and skies will be mostly clear at night at 19 degrees later on in Kisumu. In Kakamega, currently at 15. We are seeing a lot of partly in the... good weather coming up in the day, and it's going to rise to 28 and dropping to 15 later on in the day. Some precipitation is expected at 40%, some humidity at 43%. Mombasa waking up at 25 degrees already at 6:19. Mostly sunny skies during the day, highs of 30 and lows of 25 later on in the evening. And if you go to Malindi, 17 right now, partly sunny skies rising to 27 and dropping later to 24. Let's go across the borders to Kampala, Uganda, 26, partly sunny skies. That's what's going to happen during the day, and 17 later on at night. And Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, with John Pombe Magufuli freshly declared president, 22 degrees right now. It's going to rise to 28, but then it'll drop later on at night, but only to 22, back to 22. Johannesburg is partly quite cold this morning. Right now, it's mostly clear, 10 degrees. It's going to rise to 21 with rain showers and then drop to 10 degrees later. Lagos in Nigeria, it's going to have a mostly cloudy day at 31 degrees and then dropping to 24. And Kinshasa in DRC is going to be 30 and then dropping about to 22 degrees Celsius. We'll be looking at the other cities around the world in subsequent weather forecast bulletins. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's a Situation Room.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice.
Online, who is not online? Wake them up wherever they are. Robert Bogo, good morning, Mombasa as well. Tuned in. Shage Wandongo, we see you. You're locked in. And we see Lawrence Carey says, good morning. Good to be back after a 1 week hiatus traveling. We are happy that you had safe travels, Lawrence, and welcome back. Nakuru is tuned in, according to Charity Minor. Bede Asli of Macha, well tuned. And Labantanui Kaptel of Koriot in Nandi County is tuned in. Phyllis Moge, tuned in from Kasarani, good morning. And Dorcas Kimodo is in Malindi. Missing Sister Ndu. Well, yes, we're missing Sister Ndu. She was not able to come back today. She'll be joining us hopefully from Wednesday. She's still under the weather. She's not feeling too good, but we wish her all the best. So, CT, what is today's proverb at 22 minutes after 6?
Well, today's proverb at 22 minutes after 6. I think I want to preface whatever I want to quote as today's quotation with an understanding of what African proverbs were purposed to actually achieve. All right. One, some of them simply pointed out to what was considered a cultural system. Others talked about expressing sentiments, emotional sentiments that communities had. Some used humor to just point out things in life. Others were actually tailored for very specific situations. But all in all, the list could go on, but they were intended for a very specific purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. Today's proverb. If the cockroach wants to rule over the chicken, then it must hire the fox as a bodyguard.
If the cockroach wants to rule over the chicken, it must hire the fox as a bodyguard.
Yes.
Because the chicken will eat the cockroach.
Yes, and the fox will eat the chicken.
And the fox will eat the chicken. So if you view as a... So you must bring the fox to your side.
Precisely. And foxes are not known to eat cockroaches. No.
It will protect you.
Not their preferred diet.
And because it's working for you, it will not eat the chicken.
Well, the chicken will not go near you because the chicken will know that any proximity to the cockroach will mean that...
The fox will eat it.
Yes, precisely.
So the best thing then for the chicken is to elect cockroach as their leader.
Oh, but only under these specific
I'm
circumstances.
seeing the benefit here actually working for the chicken. In all ways.
Explain.
Because now here you are as chicken, you can find other food. You don't have to eat the cockroach.
You can eat worms.
And you are sure that your biggest enemy, the fox, is not going to eat you. And the fox will also scare away other potential eaters.
Precisely.
Chicken, look for cockroach as your leader. Let's look at the headlines. So both The Nation and The Standard have a similar headline. Big story is the big split in the BBI, billed as a cure for perennial divisive politics in Kenya. The Building Bridges initiative has taken a path that is likely to lead to even more divisions. The process has already alienated Deputy President William Ruto and his allies, who are pushing for changes to the final report. The President and Raila Odinga's men have ruled out any talks. Headline on The Nation. The Standard says, Ruto left out of BBI power talks. Jubilee and ODM lawmakers allied to the President and Raila have hold up in Naivasha to chart a way forward for the handshake report, as allies of the DP protest that they were not invited. And those that are saying they were not invited. Naivasha is in Nakuru County. The Naivasha MP says not invited. The Naivasha Senator says not invited. The MP for Nandi, the Senator for Nandi, Samson Cherargei, says we were not invited. We did not receive any invitation. Caleb Kositanyi, the Deputy Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, says, I'm told there is another meeting in 1 week, specifically for those who are not invited to Naivasha. But those allied to the President and the ODM leader are saying, we did not invite everybody, only those who support and champion President Uhuru Kenyatta's agenda. That is according to Irongo Kangata, the Senate Majority Whip. John Badi, the minority leader and ODM chairman, says that the retreat in Naivasha was organized by the House leadership. Some were invited, others were not. Those who were not invited will attend another session. This is for the MPs who believe in the BBI process.
Well, the Star also has the headline, stage set for divisive BBI campaigns. That's their headline. Okay. Since the launch, two camps have emerged, one pushing for its amendment, the other for its retention as it is. This is an interesting headline.
Why?
Well, you see, the narrative prior to the launch had been even more divisive than what we're seeing now.
It was absolute no.
Forget about this thing. This thing is this. Anything negative that could be said about the BBI was said. But that has toned down significantly. And we are talking about, can we consider amendments?
Yeah.
All this, we were not invited. That isn't the tone of someone who has rejected something. That is the tone of somebody who wants to be part of that process. But they have not been included. Because if indeed the tone of weeks was still in force, they would have not commented. They said, anyway, we were not even interested in attending this thing, so what's the big deal?
Even if they invited us,
we're not going to go because this is not something we support. But somewhere along the line, there has been a change in tune and there's been a change in tone. Okay, but of significance, if I'm to read what is attributed to one Mr. Maina Commander, a nominated MP, let it be known that nothing will be added or removed from the report. We are passing it as it is. That is why we had the first draft so that people can read and give us their views.
Bas.
Now, that's the sort of stand that we previously had. You had people like this who supported it, saying such a thing, and those who are opposed to it saying something equally.
So now the hard stand is actually being adopted by those who support the BBI.
Yes.
Because even John Buddy, the Super South MP, who's also the chairman of ODM and the minority leader in the National Assembly, says, I've heard the DP and his team talk about further consultations about the BBI report. As the leader of minority, this document is final. The new narrative that's emerging, and you pointed it out very well, is the two words here. Two phrases. One is divisive referendum, or a consensus building and divisive referendum.
Two.
We must make sure that there's consensus building so that we avoid a divisive referendum.
And yet, today, one of the requirements of a referendum is to get at least 1 million a million signatures, rather, not votes. Okay, that process has kicked off today. So when they say that they're going on, they're not joking about it.
Who's kicked that off?
The team that is pro the BBI. They've started looking for the signatures.
So they want to go through the popular initiative route.
Yes.
Wow, that's a long route.
No, it doesn't have to be a long route. It depends on how they've organized it.
You see, it has to go to the county assemblies.
Yes, it does.
So get 1 million signatures, take them to the IEBC. IEBC verifies those signatures, and then now that whole bill is taken to the 47 county assemblies, get at least 50% of them approving it, and then go to the National Assembly, and then go to a referendum. Nice process.
It is, but think about it. Is that not consensus building?
It's not opening it up for amendments or debates.
No, it isn't. I'm very specific in what I'm asking. Is that not consensus building? Here's the document. This is what we want. And we want consensus for this document, not the amended version. Is that not consensus building?
What it is ramming it down the throats. You will have...
You are aware that you've avoided answering my question completely.
It is not consensus building. You will have more than half. What is it? Half of 47. More than half of 47.
Half of 47
we're looking at it as 20.
It is 28.5.
Okay, so 29 counties, at least 29 counties, will definitely be taken through this thing, and they'll say, the counties assemblies will say, yes, let it pass. It'll go... That builds the whole narrative that, you see, this thing has already been approved by the county assemblies. Those are representatives of the people in the county, at the county level, at ward level. If it goes to the National Assembly and then also it passes, because it cannot stop at the National Assembly once it has gone through that process, then it goes to a referendum, we'll be told, this is the document.
What I do know, having said what I've said, because that is what I've actually read, is this. If we thought we had seen drama before, we are now going to see some real live drama over the issue of the BBI.
This is it.
Yes, anyone who feels they have a voice will want to raise that voice and will want to be heard. It's like you get the impression that this is a bandwagon that someone doesn't want to be left out of. So, but the problem with such initiatives and the problem with the drama that is now building, if we're not careful, it may actually remove the value of the process completely from it, and it just becomes one other political drama.
Yeah, it just becomes a whole political drama. I think they missed the opportunity, if you ask me. During those days when we had the reggae rallies, That should have been a consensus building platform. That should have been where, and I said this when the report was first released, create constituent assemblies, even across the 47 counties. Let people go and look at this report. Let them spend a week at the county assembly, or no, a week at the county forums, looking at this report, discussing it from their county perspective, seeing what works. Then those reports then are the ones that are taken to the BBI task force to be harmonized. When you say that they went to Kisii and then Friday was one big meeting where leaders came and spoke. Saturday is a political rally, and now we have said that has verified the BBI.
The eyes have it.
The BBI report.
But think
we missed
about
an
it.
opportunity for that consensus building at that point.
They may very well have, but consider what exactly were they combating with. You had a situation where the deputy president and his brigade were all over the landscape doing their thing, and they were advancing whatever cause that they were advancing, right?
Yep.
So now, my thinking on this matter is, they knew that if you perhaps reveal this document in its entirety early, you are setting yourself up. Because you've now given ammunition to people who perhaps don't support it to do all manner of things with it. So keep it close to your chest. Release it when you think it's politically expedient. Yes.
And there's not much time.
Yes.
Well,
That is how.
commander can now say, well, look, this thing is done. We
That's
don't
how
have
I.
time.
That's how I see it. Because some people sat and it's clearly they thought about it, weighed what was happening, and saying, you know something, this can be a tool we can use to thwart what we are seeing here. If we release it early, it will not work in our favor. So let's give it time and see how this thing develops, and then release it at a time of our choosing. And in my mind, that is what they have done. And upon when it was released, I don't know of what back room chatter has been or negotiations that have been, but it's been released and the conversation has changed.
Let's take a look at the traffic. 27 minutes to 7. This is Kenya's biggest conversation.
Spice FM, Malindi.
Spice and everything nice. All right. Okay. Spice FM.
Okay.
Spice up your...
So, from Thika Road coming into town, things are already moving. Matatus from Thika Road, the final stage in Ngara and Parklands. Matatus from Machakos and Langata, railway stage. So, BRT, there's a new city bus company called the BRT. All right, let's look at the other parts of the roads. Thika Road, traffic building up from Muthaiga, but slowly moving, coming into town. And then Outer Ring Road from Donholm to Allsops was looking good about 20 minutes ago. I wonder how it's going to be looking in about 20 minutes to come. Other parts of Mombasa Road is also building up as it's heading towards town and the usual areas. And this is past Mlolongo coming to the JKIA. Starts building up there and then going into the city cabanas. It still gets busy, but going in towards town, it'll be moving smoothly. So we'll be looking at Kiambu Road at 7 o'clock when it gets to become Kiambu Road proper. And then we'll also be looking at Thika Road coming into town in the 7 o'clock hour as well. Langata Road so far good, and Ngong Road is also quite good. 26 minutes to 7.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
All right, so, we looked at today's proverb, but we forgot our usual tweet proverb. And this is from Kenchege Makaveli Chinjaua. He is, of course, here with his wise saying of the day. Sometimes you just have to play the role of a fool to fool the fool who thinks they are fooling you. Sometimes you just have to play the role of a fool to fool the fool who thinks they are fooling you.
Indeed. There was an even interesting one that I got. The same boiling water that softens the potato also hardens the egg.
Same boiling water. All right. So let's look at other headlines.
Goodness gracious me. We have something unique that is happening here. Well, it isn't the first time that has happened, but we have 4 MPs who are traveling to the US to observe the Trump-Biden presidential election.
Right.
Yes. 4 MPs. Let me just read. Rarieda MP, Otiendo Molo, Daragwa MP, Jeremiah Kioni, Kisumu Senator, Fred Outa, and Mbala MP, Abdi Shurie.
They're going as observers.
They're going as observers. I've never understood this. What exactly is an observer supposed to do, apart from simply looking at the basic tenets of an election? Are they fair? People being given the requisite freedom to do what they want to do? Beyond that,
I don't know. I don't know whether an observer's report is then now taken by the local electoral management body or even the local assemblies and used to fine-tune or refine what may have been seen by, because that would be the idea.
and even if they
This
give an
is
opinion,
a third party who is completely non-partisan, who is not even from participating in this election at all in any way. They don't have a cock in the fight. So when they observe and they say, this is what we noticed. We noticed, for example, that there was a delay in very many areas of the opening of the polling stations, or we noticed that the counting was not smooth because of how it was being conducted. We noticed this and the other. Then what?
well, that's what I'm wondering, because having said that, then what? Does it change anything? I think not, but it at least, probably from an international perspective, it then offers a third perspective other than the perspective that is within the country of those pro and against whoever it is. It says this is what we view it as. Meaning, if they say from our observation it was a good, it was fair, this and this was observed and so forth, then it validates the results
Yep.
internationally.
Yep.
But it doesn't stop the person who won, even if they disagree, from being whoever they are. It doesn't stop them. So in real terms, it's just something, should we call it a perspective that you can bear in mind when you consider that particular country. But beyond that, I don't see.
Well, but also it helps in bringing in the legitimacy of the person who's elected as leader. When observers unanimously come up with a report and say, we found it to be credible, we found there were issues here and there, but overall we say that this election was credible, it was fair, it was democratic. Then the person who's elected, who's declared winner, can go in and say, even third-party observers looked at the process and they said, I was validly elected by the people.
But the US election has introduced a new twist to its whole process, and that is in the pronouncements that we've heard. The president has been quoted as having said certain things that amount to, one, him not accepting the results if they don't favor him. Two, it's also been alleged that the president has said that he is going to declare himself winner. It's been said. It's been said. So, what this seems to be prepping up for is a situation where an epic legal battle is already in the offing, even before the actual so-called election day processes are underway.
Yeah.
We already the gearing up that usually awaits the announcement of the results in America. They're taking place even before the actual election day.
Yeah.
And then when you think about a pronouncement such as the one which is being attributed to the president about him declaring, you see what then comes to question is, what about the postal votes? Because those are not counted. Even if they're counted, you don't get the results immediately.
Yeah.
So how will that play out? Again, we are presented with an epic legal situation that clearly appears that if things go the way it's being alleged, it's going to play out with in this American process. And maybe the observers will learn a thing or two from that. Yes.
So the story in The Nation today is American states are preparing for post-election violence.
I need you to read that again. Which country in Africa?
American states are preparing for post-election violence.
Okay.
Hammers are pounding and saws are buzzing in Washington as crews board up stores amid fears that the pivotal U.S. presidential election next week, or that's this week, could degenerate into unrest. In Washington, near the stately White House and elsewhere, many merchants and office building managers are working feverishly to protect their property in the tense final days before the showdown. So people are looking at, okay, how do we protect our shops? How do we protect our areas? Because we expect that there will be some skirmishes here and there. Post-election violence. I am expecting that the chairman of the African Union, the South African president, is ready with his statement condemning incidences of violence, calling on the leaders, the personalities to tone down their rhetoric, to go to the negotiating table, because choices have consequences. If they don't do that, we'll have missed an opportunity. Perfect opportunity.
Actually, you don't even need to think about what to say. Simply go back into your archives.
Just pull out one of their statements.
It's one of the many statements that they made about this thing and just repeat it verbatim, word for word.
Just sign down there, Cyril Ramaphosa,
Yes.
Chairman, African Union.
But of interest.
And
right?
then also, our man hasn't been confirmed to go to the UN ambassador, and he should have been there and joined the others in writing this statement. This is a joint statement. with the
Ambassador Kimani.
Yes, African Union ambassadors.
But you know, I was thinking about it the other day. It's an important posting, but the Dr. Kimani's position in this country was that of a permanent secretary, is it not?
No, not quite. He has been heading other bodies at some point.
Yes, but if you're an advisor, advisor positions,
The level.
yes. And I would argue that an ambassadorial post is lower in terms of levels of seniority. Prestigious as it may sound. And he also sort of like hinted at it and said, well, you know, when he was before the committee, he said, this job that I'm now getting will involve a pay cut. Yes. Jobs don't involve pay cuts if it is a promotion.
If they are promotions.
Yes.
It's the prestige that counts.
It's the prestige that counts here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we'll be looking at.
Yes.
We'll discuss COVID, so let me skip that. But then there's a statement that I'd like to read before we do this break. Kakuzi. This tough lawyer from the UK called Mr. Day comes
Yes.
in and is representing people around the community around Kakuzi. Okay? Go to the UK, case in the UK, maneno. One of the key clients of Kakuzi that takes avocado decides, you know what, you guys, the way it's looking, no, we cannot take avocado from you anymore. So Kakuzi has come back home and they decided, we are going to settle with you guys. We want to hear what you have. We are committing to make changes. We are committing to
Make reparations.
Make reparations.
Yes.
But at the same time, they have made changes even at the board level. So they have brought in Mr. Nicholas Nganga, who's the former chairman of Safaricom, and is also currently the chairman of Car and General and G4S Security, to be their new chairman. So Nicholas Nganga now is the chairman of Kakuzi board. And this one is replacing Mr. Graham McLean, who is stepping down from that role, but he'll still remain an executive director. Okay? They have also brought in somebody else, who is Dr. John Kibunga Kimani, who has been appointed to the board of Kakuzi as a non-executive director, all of them with effect from yesterday.
Significantly, Dr. Kimani is considered the second largest shareholder
Of
this lovely.
individual shareholder.
Yep.
The other thing about Dr. Kimani is that he actually grew up around the farm.
Yes.
And Dr. Kimani is an expert in many things. He is an agronomist and an expert in agriculture issues. Economic Development Institute in the world. He's he's a fellow of the Economic Development Institute of the World Bank. He holds a BSc in agriculture. His master's is also in agriculture. His PhD is in development studies, economics and social anthropology. And he's a member of Agricultural Society of Kenya. He's somebody who agriculture. But he grew up in Kakuzi. He knows Kakuzi very well. They've also come up with a new body that is called the Independent Human Rights Advisory Committee. To enhance governance structures within Kakuzi, the board is establishing an independent human rights advisory committee, which will comprise experienced and distinguished individuals drawn from the human rights sector locally and internationally, and representatives of our stakeholders. Stakeholders here read
Wananchi.
community around them. Andrew Ndegwa Njoroge, a non-executive director, will sit on this independent human rights advisory committee. They have also come up with another body called Operational Level Grievance Mechanism So they're saying they're upgrading their current alternative dispute resolution process and setting up a full operational level grievance mechanism as defined by UN guiding principles on business and human rights. This, according to them, is to enable members of the community to have their grievances heard and resolved quickly, impartially, and in accordance with internationally recognized best practices. They have reacted properly. They have said, okay.
Do we go on the break, or should we talk a little bit about this?
We can talk a little bit about this.
Consider, for instance, what has led to something that they could have even done before.
Yep.
Did they need the foot on their head? Did they need this
Hammer.
Yes.
The mallet, basically.
Yes. Did they need it? Now, as you were
I think
reading,
they did.
the thinking that comes to my mind is how it is people prefer conformity, the status quo, if it favors them, and until they are faced with the alternative in the negative, and the picture is clear before their very eyes, they will not see the need for change.
Yep.
Because this is what was presented.
Yep.
The case had started long before it even came to the attention of the media and became publicized. Why did they wait for all this to happen? They needed people saying, look, folks, we're not going to deal with you. I know. This kind of thing. It left the US, the UK went to the US. Suddenly, the business was being threatened. Because it may start with avocado, but they may decide, you're the same people who do this. No. We're not going to work with you.
You have a bad name.
You do. So now they're taking every step to make sure that they have dealt with this thing conclusively. All this was possible.
It was possible earlier, but I think even the many times when you raise this city and you say, until you get to the point where you go through something, you don't realize.
No.
You don't realize what exactly is happening around you.
No.
So this was an important thing, and we really, I'd like to say the community around there and the lawyer that they got, they've done a very good job. Because in the end, even without monetary reparations, the steps that have been taken will ensure, because at the end, what you want is to live harmoniously. You don't want to be beaten up by guards all the
You see, the beauty in choosing Mr. Day, Mr. Day understands their legal system, understands it well. And he obviously understands the thinking of those in power or authority, whether it's corporate, commercial, or even in government. He does.
Yes.
So he knows exactly how to approach the matter. Yes.
Pinch it.
He
where
knows.
it hurts
He knows.
most.
Present them with something that they will look at and realize, no.
Nikubai.
No. Let's have a chat about this.
Nikubai. Before we go to the break, so let's look at, this is in Kakuzi in Murang'a County. There's another farm that's in Murang'a and Kiambu counties, and this is Del Monte.
Yes.
You've had cases about Del Monte many times before. It's in the papers today. Del Monte accused of brutality again. 2 residents found near a farm. So the story is being told of this particular one gentleman. It's around several people, I think 5 of them. But the particular gentleman whose story is carrying most of the text here is an 80-year-old man called Paul Goge Kimodo. Now, Paul Goge Kimodo says that on one Sunday afternoon, he was in his farm near the Thika-based Del Monte, when truncheon-wielding guards and their dogs descended on him. Helping Mr. Mboro on the farm was Mr. Geoffrey Ndongo, who is 24 years old. The guards ordered them to lie down. And Mr. Mboro, the 80-year-old man, Mr. Kimodo, says, hey, when they told us to lie down, I knew we were in trouble. So he decided to run. Then the guards apparently set dogs upon him. Dogs caught up with him. He's 80 years old, for crying out loud. There's nowhere far he's going to run. Dogs, when he was desperately trying to fend off the animals, he had multiple dog bites on his face and arms. When the guards caught up with Mr. Buru, now this is they beat him badly. And this is Stephen Boro, who's 30 years old. They beat him badly on account of cooperating with the guards by surrendering. Ndongo suffered a few dog bites on his behind as he lay prostrate. So we're talking about 2 men, Boro 30 and Ndongo 24. The 2 were driven to Ngati police base and found 3 other young men, Samuel Kinyungu, Peter Gwoko, and Julius Ndongo, who had been picked up elsewhere. Then police refused to detain Mr. Mboro, the one who was having dog bites, because they said he's in bad shape, and they advised the guards to take him to hospital. The area police boss, Peter Mushami, says, our officers could not accept to admit this man to our station because the following day, what was going to happen is that the community was going to accuse my junior officers of beating up this man while in police cell. So he said, no, you guys, you brought him, take him first of all to the hospital. Let it be recorded. The guards left the station with Moro, but instead of taking him to the hospital, they dumped him in the bush at night, some 10 kilometers from his home. 10 kilometers from home. He was later found unconscious by herders who called his family. He was released unconditionally after collapsing in the cell the following day. The Ndongo, the other one. The two men have not received any treatment as their families have no money. The three men they found in the cells were taken to court and they were all jailed for a month or fined of 15,000 shillings each. And when the management of the farm is asked, they say in a statement, Del Monte managing director said the two men were pineapple thieves. While on patrol, our guards encountered two gangs of thieves fighting over the opportunity to steal pineapples from our farm. It says as some of the thieves ran away, but 5 remained behind. As per the regular process, the 2 were apprehended by the guards. They were handed over to the police patrol base for interrogation. And that's what the case is saying.
I see. So apprehension nowadays includes dog bites.
Oh, yeah.
And a beating.
Oh, yeah.
Because if that doesn't happen, then you haven't been apprehended properly. And also, there's something they've thrown in here. You are dumped many kilometers away from your home in a state where they know very well you are unable to walk, isn't it?
At night.
But surely, let's take the view that they were stealing pineapples. So when people are caught stealing pineapples, this is what you do. You set dogs on them and you beat them. To a pulp, really.
Yep.
Del Monte clearly are not smelling the coffee.
They need a word.
They will receive words, not even a word. This one, they've asked for it.
They need a word.
They asked for it.
And I hope that they get that word because this is a conversation that has happened many times. The community around there would be complaining. The farm itself would also be complaining and saying, look, we deal with very many cases of theft.
Yes, they do.
So how do you address this? They ought to find ways of addressing it. You see, like the way Kakuzi has come up with a dispute resolution
Why don't they have
mechanism.
one? And they're involving the community because that's where the problem is coming from.
Yep.
Do you remember the one time it was reported that the deputy chief justice pinched the cheek of
A security guard.
That's it. Seems innocuous, doesn't it? The consequences?
Out of a job.
Yes. But dragged through the mud first.
Completely. Which was unnecessary.
Oh man, wasn't it just?
It was just unnecessary. There was no point of going through all that.
None whatsoever. And the guard was merely doing their job.
Yeah. So let's continue looking at other headlines as we go to the top of the hour.
Ooh.
What's in the Business Daily?
Business Daily. I'm trying to figure out what I should actually point to. But anyway, what I mentioned with regards to the U.S. elections. Top news. Biden legal advisor preps for a possible dispute U.S. poll outcome. That one we've already spoken of. All right. But on a more positive note, there's still hope in fight against cancer in Kenya. As Breast Awareness Cancer Month, it's a month, not a day, comes to an end, WHO statistics paint a grim picture on this front with an expected 60% increase in cancer cases over the next 2 decades if the current trends continue. It said the COVID pandemic has worsened the situation for cancer patients who are already immunosuppressed. When the immune system is compromised, there is a greater risk of serious complications from viruses like COVID-19. All right? Then there's the issue of barriers that prevent people from receiving care. However, there's an introduction here that has come into being of cancer care as part of the outpatient package, which is being introduced by NHIF. This is supposed to be the hope that I was speaking of. So they've brought this in so that even if you do exhibit signs of cancer and or indeed you're tested positive for cancer here, the NHIF is coming up with a package that will give you hope, because the whole process of managing cancer, apart from just the pain and the discomfort, there's the cost to it. Extremely expensive.
It's very, very expensive. Yes. That would be some good news, especially if you can find a way of sorting out the cost element in this conversation.
Before we even end up, we need to think about the cost of what the demon we're dealing with, called COVID-19.
COVID-19.
Yes. the headline in The Nation points that Kenyans pay billions in COVID-19 hospital bills. According to The Nation, they're saying that the total cost for patients with severe or critical COVID-19, total cost, rounds off to say 150,000 shillings. Cost per day, 12,257. Okay. Patients with mild or moderate COVID-19, total cost 23,942. Cost per day, 1,995. Asymptomatic COVID-19 patients, total cost 23,916. Cost per day, 1,993.
I looked at that report.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful story because they are quoting researchers from Kemri, and they say it's a report that's already uploaded by the Kenyan scientists on the online health sciences portal, Journal Medrex 4, or is it Med R14?
Yes.
Well, there's XIV, could be Med R14. On page 6 and 7 of The Nation, then there's an entire table here that shows the costs.
Yes, they do.
Asymptomatic home-based
They
care,
itemize it
total
for you.
cost, and then they have itemized PPEs are 18,000 shillings. Going all the way to PPEs in ICU, 243,000 shillings. That brings the total cost. If you went to ICU, you'd need 712,000 shillings to treat COVID. Severe cases, 150,000 shillings.
Isolation.
Isolation, 89. If you're in home-based care and you have moderate symptoms, 23,000, Bob. That's about 24K. If you're in isolation and you're asymptomatic, 88,000 cases. If you're in home-based care and you're asymptomatic, you're going to be around 24,000, Bob. These are very high costs.
You know, I am looking at these costs, okay? And first of all, what comes to my mind is the contribution that NHIF is likely to pay for you, okay? If that is accepted. But even if NHIF also have a ceiling. So what happens when the costs go beyond the ceiling? And we know that the mechanism by which people are able to afford these things is if they're working. Because then they can get a salary. Now that we know has also been endangered. So this is a dire picture being painted here.
We'll discuss this, I think, in the 9 o'clock hour as well and find out.
Let's bring it up and find out how it is.
Yes.
And why these costs are what they are.
Why they are so high, and then who foots these bills? Like we said, it's a pandemic. What is the government's role? Dr. Mercy Korir has raised this before and said, as far as she's concerned, when you talk about fighting COVID-19, everything treat it as government responsibility, top to bottom. Whether you're in home-based care, whether you're in treatment, in isolation, all these costs should be borne by government. Government is the collective of all of us as a country, as a republic. This is what we should just be looking at. Because these are very high costs. Imagine you just fall ill and immediately you're taken to hospital and then your condition deteriorates. You move from isolation to severe case and then you go into ICU for a bit. 700,000 shillings.
Now, you look at this and you think, what is likely to actually kill you? Is it the disease or the stress-related factors when you consider the cost and the ramifications of this on your family?
Indeed.
Because the stress factor from that usually is really severe.
Indeed. Keep it right here. We have more conversations coming up in the next hour. We will be looking at how Africans lost billions in very many scams. We'll talk about one that is being called a pyramid scheme by Swedish scammers. A report out by BBC this morning looks at this, and we'll be talking to the journalist who's done this report. We'll be looking at every other bit of it. What is it that has happened around the country, not just with this particular organization, but with many others? And what kind of justice have we gotten so far? Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Spice FM. Nakuru. Traffic.
Kunaendaje barabarani? What are people saying? Thika Road is just messy on a Monday. Traffic from Utalii, and it's just about 7 o'clock. Kiambu Road leo ni noma. Okay? Where else? Mombasa Road, it's crazy coming into town. We have talked about Thika. We've talked about Juja Road is also going to be crazy. It's already starting to build up. So we know Kiambu Road is bad. We know Thika Road is bad. We also know, oh my goodness. It was very good all the way from Allsops to Pangani about a few minutes ago, but then it just turned crazy. Traffic on Thika Road starting at Garden City. What is happening on Ngong Road? Ngong Road, it's building up, but it's around the lights, but it's coming smoothly into town. Other parts, Jogoo Road, it'll start piling up at Landis, that is from City Stadium roundabout. It's starting to look busy there as well. So anything else that you think we need to talk about, especially if there are accidents, especially when there's a proper pile-up and people are not moving, and we'd like to advise people to avoid that section of the road. 40127 is the SMS number to text us. And Spice FM KE is our Twitter handle. Please also tag us. Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in
It is 2
punching
minutes
up,
after 7.
not
Thank
down.
you very much for joining
This-
us this second day of November 2020. Happy Monday wherever you're tuned in. Whether you are in Nairobi on 94.4, whether you're in Mombasa, whether in Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, whether you're watching us on KTN Home, welcome to our audience on KTN Home, who will be with us from now until 9 o'clock. And also, if you're watching us online, Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter, or spicefm.co.ke from any part of the world. We know we've got audience in Myanmar, we've got people who watch us in Germany, we've got people in Australia, all the way in the United States as well. Everybody, wherever you are, welcome. We do not have Ndu Oko with us today. She's unwell. She'll be hopefully joining us later in the week. But in the room this morning is Eric Latif and C.T. Muga, who has today's proverb.
Indeed, I do. If the cockroach wants to rule over the chicken, then it must hire the fox as a bodyguard.
If the cockroach wants to rule over the chicken, then it must.
Hire a fox as the bodyguard.
All right. This is because chicken eat cockroach, fox eats chicken. Fox does not eat cockroach.
Deal with, if you want to manage a threat, present an even bigger threat. Here is chicken thinking of a meal.
Yep.
So why don't you present the chicken with the option of it considering itself being a meal?
Yep. Yep. So let's talk about business opportunities or scams that are operating in the market. There's a story that has been released today by the BBC, the Africa Eye journalist. Her name is Ayanda Charlie, did an investigative piece about a company called Crowd1. And part of that story has also been written in the Standard this morning by Daniel Wesangula in collaboration with the BBC. All about the money, all about the planes, all about the bottles of expensive champagne and sleek suits, all about an unattainable dream sold to a population that's trying to pry itself out of poverty and into a better life. Close to 2 years, Crowd1, an online-based investment opportunity, promised the key that would open the doors to a magical kingdom, until it all came down, bringing with it the ambitions and dreams of Africa's poor who had invested all their hard-earned money for a chance at this life. So the investigative report of BBC's Africa Eye reveals that investors have been left with nothing but pain and agony, with some losing their life savings to a greatly marketed pyramid scheme in one of the world's most elaborated frauds. The scheme appears to have made a fortune for a handful of European scammers, many of them Swedish, but it has left behind a trail of debt and poverty in countries including South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria. So this is, I said earlier, until towards the end of the week, I had not heard of Crowd1. And then I start going online to look for crowd one, and I find there have been conversations about this happening in the country. People saying, I want to join into crowd one. Is this how is this thing? How does this thing work? Going even up to a point where they put in people online and say, so and so, congratulations for your brand new Maserati, and this is a brand new Maserati car. This is a high-end car, paid cash courtesy of the business. This person has earned more than 575 million shillings, a Kenyan who has earned more than 500 million shillings in a span of 1 year.
500 million?
Months. Yes. And then they have risen to the rank of senior president from humble backgrounds in Meru County to becoming number one in East Africa. And they even get a Maserati car. So this company apparently
Which you drive where when you're in Kenya exactly? Which road?
Those are things you deal with later. You get the car, then you find out the road. You look for the road.
Well, maybe Maseratis, I believe they've also come up with SUVs.
In this country, you'll put spacers.
In this country, we don't have bumps, my friend.
You have holes.
Yes.
Put spacer.
Okay.
Raise the car a little bit, and then you can drive on the road. So apparently, this company, what does it do? It's a company that it's a multi-level marketing company, and it tells you join in, and then you pay a certain amount of the joining fee. This is according to that story. Very well done story by the journalist Ayanda Charlie, who we'll be speaking to in about 20 or so minutes. So you pay a joining fee.
Yes.
After you pay a joining fee, then you also now start getting other material. Though there's a lot of training. So you'll attend training, and you'll get a training package. Depending on what kind of package that you've paid for, you also see the number of hours of training that you get. And then now they start also selling you into other, you buy shares into other, is this shares or whatever, into other.
Let's call them shares.
Shares.
Yes.
Into other businesses that are also
It's like
affiliated, associated with them.
You participate.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that as you buy this, as those companies make profit, then that profit is also divided amongst its shareholders. That includes you. And how else do you make money? You also make money by selling this to your network of friends. Just the same way multi-level marketing works. You, as Eric Latif, you get into the multi-level marketing, and then you recruit CT Muga. CT Muga uses the product or services, and as CT Muga is spending money, then Eric is also making a shilling from what CT Muga is spending. CT Muga recruits people below him, and CT makes a shilling, and then part of that money also goes to Eric, and the person who also introduced Eric is making money. Multi-level marketing, and it's a pyramid with the guys at the top receiving money from everybody at the base.
You know, the principle, without some of the details that we then find in what have been termed as common traits of pyramid schemes, the thinking behind it is sound, and it is actually used by very many reputable businesses. Essentially, what you're doing is you have a program that accumulates money from as many people as possible.
You're pooling money.
Principle on which insurance is based on. Okay? You look at banking in its most basic form, that's what they do.
Bring money,
Yes.
lend
Doubt
money,
at an interest, and they're straightforward.
earn money,
Yes.
give it to shareholders,
Yes.
give it as interest to the person who's deposited their money.
So if you listen to the language is it implies a great similarities to what we know as conventional businesses. Then comes the issue of now buying and selling products, which unfortunately are not always in demand. But then there's always the insistence that you, the person who is a member of this scheme, has to buy certain amounts of these products to maintain a certain level of leadership. Now, that twisting of the arm is probably what ought to raise the alarm bells, because it starts off with a lovely narrative. You are then sold on to stories of individuals who've moved, as they call it, from grass to grace. Someone who was just a simple individual who's suddenly one of the wealthiest people you can ever think of, quoting amounts that they have earned that are mind-boggling. Now, these are stories that are given to you as part of their promotional plan, in my view, to lure you and to pull you in, because you can see if so-and-so can win this money, and you choose a place, Meru. Where in Meru? Who is this person? Does anybody know them? Now,
500 million, boss.
$500 million is it's a mind-boggling amount. It's a mind-boggling amount. Now, then they throw in a Maserati, okay? You can't get more high-end in terms of vehicle than that particular vehicle,
Yeah.
all right?
Yeah.
But there we are. Now, the beauty of these people is that there is no amount of money they're not willing to accept. In reality, they'll say, for this you get this, but if you want more, and you hope to get bigger returns, then you do
Pay
this.
more.
Now, what is tragic at the end of this story is people put their life savings, people put in monies that they have worked very hard to accumulate in the hope of solving this problem of poverty that they have once and for all. And in so doing, what they end up doing is ending up even poorer than they were when they first began. And this is really putting it as mildly as I possibly can. But it isn't the first time that we've had these pyramid schemes in Kenya.
Yep.
No, we haven't.
Ponzi schemes have been many. And in fact, even in this particular one, the Capital Markets Authority itself has issued warnings about it, and these stories have been carried in the papers. As recently as April 3rd, 2020, there was a story in The Nation saying, invest in crowd one at your own risk. And according to the CMA, digital platform has been wooing potential clients to buy packages, promising them hefty dividends. Capital Markets Authority had issued a warning on this. COMESA had issued a warning on this, on saying, look, there's what is happening in here, and we are seeing that there are issues that you need to be concerned about. So already there have been warnings, but the COMESA Competition Commission issued a warning against pyramid schemes, where it singled out Crowd One, saying it poses as a multi-level marketer but operates as a pyramid scheme. Consumers are therefore advised to exercise caution when dealing with Crowd One, and also conduct research about companies that they wish to invest in to avoid losing their hard-earned money. This is according to the COMESA Competition Commission. This, therefore, says COMESA warned against dealing with a network marketer, saying it's been flagged in Namibia, in Philippines, in Mauritius, in New Zealand. It's being investigated in South Africa. Other regulators in the country, Kina Sacco Society, Kina the Capital Markets Authority, Kina Central Bank of Kenya, and the Retirement Benefits Authority, and all, had also come up with a report, and they are calling it the white paper. They issued a warning, and they said, as the corona pandemic continues to unfold, we warn the public of the reemergence of fraudulent and unlicensed financial schemes seeking to take advantage of Kenyans during these challenging times. These rogue entities include online pyramid schemes, unlicensed credit and savings schemes, unlicensed online forex brokers, and traders. Warnings have been given. What some may call sufficient warning has been given. But how then do you know what is working and what's not?
Think about it. Think of the psychology behind it, all right? You know that there are groups of people, and if you'll find the people who fall prey to these schemes will fall into a certain demographic. You want to make money. And then there's the thinking of that money can be made quickly, and a lot of it can be made quickly. Those are outright lies. There is nothing of that sort. Money is never made quickly. Money is earned. Money is made when there's a value added. So you have to ask, you are the one who seems to be adding value to this scheme, as opposed to the scheme having a value of its own, which you can attach yourself to. Now, you also look at what they promise and what they actually and genuinely deliver. Remember, these people even use church platforms. Now, that's why I brought in the issue of psychology. When something comes through your church, you're very likely to believe that it is good. We've had cases of men of the cloth, or people who presented themselves as men of the cloth, also having their own schemes within their churches. But in our country, it has been with buying plots and trying to put up houses and what have you.
Yeah.
Some of the people who've invested in these things have come to a sticky end. But you see, it tells you that these are people who are preying on the vulnerable mindsets of certain people at a certain point in time. And the target is people who think in a certain way, believe that money can be made in a certain way, but who have an underlying problem that is predominantly about money and which they want to move away from.
Yeah.
So it is easy to trap you. It's easy. Pata potea.
But does it speak about, it's not, because this thing is not just about Kenya. It's not just only about Africa. I mean, Crowd One, for example, has had operations across the globe. It has been, cited in very many countries, including the Philippines, in every continent in the world.
Including Paraguay, including Burundi.
Every continent in the world, this organization had permeated.
Yes.
And in every continent, it's operating online. In every continent, it had gotten very many people joining.
Yes, it had.
So Are we that gullible as
Yes.
the human population?
Yes, we
So
are.
someone comes and tells you, you know what, just give me 1,000 bob, I'll give it to you at 3,000. And you're like, that thing is good.
Yes. You see, the Ponzi schemes we had in this country didn't just promise, they delivered. At a certain point in time, you actually, once or twice, is the third time when it got tricky. But once or twice, you would get money. The reason why it sucked in so many people put in money and got back money.
Yep.
It's not that they didn't get. So that one, you could even see how, even those who are cautious, you will put in your money, that first time, the first installment, you actually get it.
Yep.
Then the second and third get tricky. However, if you look at the role of the internet, if you look at the role of social media, and if you look at how people have latched themselves onto it, where to the point they believe everything that comes from it. How do you think, for instance, the concept of fake news, am I calling it correctly? Yes. How do you think it has gained traction? How do you think that alternative perspectives on the world, conspiracy theories, QAnon, whatever you want to call them, how do you think they've gained traction? The medium has been not just social media, but the internet connectivity and the internet revolution that we now experience on this planet. It has made things that previously were not possible. You don't meet these people. They are on the internet. And all you need to do is to have that connectivity and they can get to you.
You see, then again, there is legislation across the globe. There are market regulators. Like in the country, I've just talked about several regulators. There's a regulator for the capital markets. There's a regulator for the financial sector, the central bank. There's a regulator for the circles. There's a regulator for insurance. There's a regulator for retirement benefit schemes.
Eric,
All this regulation means that there are laws to try and ensure that business is operated smoothly.
in this country, we even have prohibition of pyramid schemes bill of 2012.
There you go.
Just so that if you want to understand how far we've gone. But it's on the internet. How then do you police the internet with such things? And how do you prevent people from actually engaging when it's online?
You see, if you monitor and then you create awareness, can you imagine, for example, if instead of just issuing a statement and saying this is what happens, and then they put it on their website, if they launched a media campaign on radio, on TV, in the papers, on billboards, saying, avoid such, avoid this. If there was a campaign that was actually launched to say, look, avoid crowd one, by COMESA, or just by the regional government.
Not these polite messages they bring.
Not those, not the statement saying, you know what, we caution you, we caution
No,
you.
avoid it.
Just come out and say, avoid it. Or come out and say, if it's possible for a country to actually go ahead and nyonga internet, and go into specifically and say, you know, Twitter, just put down Twitter. That it's possible. You can see everything else, but Twitter, you will not be able to log on to Twitter from this country. Go the same thing with the website. And say, this particular websites, go ahead and...
I have to ask this
Fund them.
question. If the people who have propagated this scheme came from, say, Nigeria, yes. If let's say they came from Argentina, if let's say they came from India or Pakistan, if let's say they came from Australia, or let me just throw in a curveball here, let's say they came from Iceland. Okay? The Swedes haven't a culture of accumulated perception that people from Sweden are not straightforward.
Yep.
They don't have it. So because the people who were at the forefront, we are informed were of Swedish nationality or came from there, do you think that this probably added to the perceived credibility of it?
Probably. It may be the way you're saying from the social science perspective, how you believe people.
Yes.
You believe someone just looking at them and thinking, okay, this person looks trustworthy.
And comes from a background that
This
is considered
person-
trustworthy.
Yes. So you go on and first of all you buy onto that, and then everything else flows.
Look
And they're
at
talking to you on a daily basis. There are daily video conferences being conducted by these guys every day.
they bombard you with that information, so you actually get conditioned without realizing that you're being conditioned. Consider the things that come out of Sweden. The world's safest cars.
Yes.
Okay, there was a vehicle, I believe it still exists, called the Volvo. For the longest time, considered the world's safest cars. All right? You look at the way they handle their affairs, they handle the citizenry. You feel people who are in this country are people who you can associate with honesty. You can associate with fair play. Now, I think those who began this scheme understood that as well.
So you look at it and see how best you can get the people on
Well,
board.
you actually want to rush to get onto this good thing because clearly it seems to be something that could benefit you immensely. Remember, if you listen to testimonies of people who have lost money, no one sets out to lose money, they're set to gain money. And in so attempting to gain money, they lose everything they had. Everything.
So coming back, there was that bill that was in Parliament as far back as 2012, right?
Yes.
And that bill was not because of the goodness of someone's heart. It was because there are people who had suffered from pyramid schemes.
My friend, they had suffered. They had really
Pyramid
suffered.
scheme comes up. Pyramid scheme, exposes itself. It goes under. People lose their money. And
Another one comes up.
The beneficiaries of these things, nothing happens to them. They are not jailed. They are not taken anywhere.
they are not.
Okay, someone is taken to court and a case takes forever. By that time, some people even have money. They're able to either finance campaigns for other people or finance their own campaigns. Some even get elected into elective positions.
They do.
They get into parliament. They are legislators. And yet, under the watchful eye of the government, while the government was still awake, people lost money.
You know, it brings.
You cannot come back and tell me, it's shauri yako. I mean, you should be very careful. Yeah, I'll be very careful. But the first thing that you think of is if there's a business operating in this country, it has gone through regulation. If there's a business operating in this country, then it has also been checked by the government. It's been allowed to operate in the government. It's not my job to go and look for at every shop and see whether, let me see your kanjo license. Let me see your registration certificate. No, I'm just going to buy. How many people ever enter into any of the supermarkets that we have today and look for whether that business is legal? You assume if it's operating, then it's legal. So I think the government has a role here, and the government has huge burden of blame to carry.
You know, they
When
actually
people are
do.
scammed.
They
by
actually
pyramid
do.
schemes.
But there's something here that I think also becomes apparent when we look at this. That gullibility is not just with pyramid schemes. I think, as I look at it, that it's a status quo. It's the same gullibility with politics and politicians and the things we lap up. It's the same gullibility with promises that if you were to pause for even just 2 seconds, you'd realize this is not probably achievable. But you'd like to believe it anyway. So you move from just being gullible to being a magic thinker. But think about it. If you think about it, well, it's something I've been thinking about since yesterday. It also lends itself. It's like we set ourselves up to be schemed. We set ourselves up. And if you look at the discussions we keep having about corruption, you know, Eric, it's not going to end. Because as Kenyans, if I were honest, we actually like corruption. We only kick a fuss when it seems to work against us or against people whom we favor. And the way we deal with corruption is we point at other people we don't favor as being the corrupt ones.
Yeah.
That's how we handle corruption.
Those in our circles
No.
are not corrupt.
We'll twist and turn and do some topsy-turvy things to say it's not possible for this to be corrupt, yet it is as blatantly corrupt as daytime is characterized by sunlight. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the truth of the matter is, that is our reality here in Kenya. We love corruption, we encourage corruption, and we always pretend it is something that it isn't.
Yep. Let's take a break now at 25 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We are talking about a new report by the BBC, Africa Eye. It's called Unmasking the Pyramid Kings, Crowd One. It's a BBC Africa Eye investigation. We'll shortly be speaking to South African investigative journalist Ayanda Charlie, who is joining us online and on Zoom. But first, let's take a break. Let's see what's happening on the skies, weather, and then traffic. And then we'll bring her into the conversation. Good morning.
You want your car to perform flawlessly? We set it as our goal to make sure you uncheck your car's engine from your problems list. Forget about residues. Forget about overheating. Forget about corrosion. Our fuel, Optimum, keeps your car's engine as clean as ever for optimal performance. Optimum of Ola Energy, ultimate protection.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, weather-wise, New York City is currently at 9 degrees Celsius. Expected partly sunny skies later in the day. Highs of 13 and then lows of 5 back into the night. In London, they're waking up to 18 degrees, cloudy morning at 7:26 a.m. Partly sunny skies throughout the day, highs of 18, and there'll be a breeze. There'll be rain in the morning, and then later on at night, 8 degrees Celsius. If you look at Johannesburg, South Africa, scattered rain showers through the day, highs of 21, and that is expected to drop to 10 later on in the evening. And now also, if we look at other parts of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, light rain expected during the day, highs of 28, lows of 22. Other parts of the world, Kampala, Uganda, there is highs of 26 later in the day and cloudy skies, lows of 17. And right now, it's 20 degrees Celsius in Kampala, Uganda. In Malindi, where right now it's 17 degrees, clear skies, but highs of 27 and lows of 16 in Malindi. In Kakamega, it's going to be sunny skies today, highs of 28 and lows of 15. And in Kisumu, Kenya, let me just go back to Kisumu. Kisumu is going to be sunny skies today, highs of 29 and lows of 19. Nairobi, highs of 24 and lows of 16. And then Nakuru, highs of 23 and lows of 15. Nyeri, highs of 22 and lows of 14. And Eldoret, temperature rising to 23 and then lows of 13 later in the day.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. Spice up your life.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
So, Thika Road, it's just chaos this Monday morning. It's chaotic. Thika Road is a mess. Everybody's saying that. And then those who are on Kiambu Road are also saying it's the same. Kiambu Road coming into town, it's bad, 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 bad. Traffic police officer deliverance stage in Naivasha Road, collecting 100 from every matatu. Well, that guy is making a lot of money this morning. Thika Superhighway is not looking so good. We've said that many times. Ngong Road coming into town, it's not so bad if you actually just follow the lights and what the lights are commanding you to do. When you stop. When you have to go, and make sure that you're also courteous on the road. Then Ngong Road will be smooth. Langata Road into town is not looking so bad until you get to Timor roundabout. It starts getting busy as people branch off to go into Mbagathi and others down into Langata Road. The others, Mombasa Road, you know yourselves. You know what happens on Mombasa Road. It's looking busy, especially at the roundabouts, and it's also busy when you're coming towards the JKIA and the City Cabana's usual hotspots. Well, let's see what else we need to tell you about. You can let us know 40127 and Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So bring in the journalist from South Africa, the BBI, South African investigative journalist from BBC, who has done this very lovely one-hour piece unmasking the Pyramid Kings, Crowd One. She had her own personal experience, went and logged into the Crowd One itself, paid in some money to see what she gets out of it, and then she also followed up with many questions to the organization. We're talking about pyramid schemes and what they do and how then people are able to be scammed, because this is global. It's happening all over the world. So how then do we make sure that people are not scammed. And I've said that the same. It's about the government. It's about how much the government does and how much how much the government can protect its people. How should the government be able to protect its people? CT.
How is never really the issue. The government has at its disposal all manner of tools by which they can protect the citizens for almost anything you can think of. The one constant in all these discussions is the willingness of the government to do what it should do. Not the ability, willingness. And that you cannot divert from. Because at the end of the day, you ask yourself, is this the first time we're experiencing this? The answer is no. Do we understand the problems that arise from such schemes on the citizenry? No. In a time such as this one, when we are clearly battling an even greater enemy called COVID, is this a time when the government should allow its citizenry to be vulnerable to such schemes? The answer is it shouldn't. Can they do something about it? Yes, they can. So the question that then has to be asked is, why are they not doing something about it? Because they can. They most certainly can.
So when you see something like this, the regulators come in and they issue the advisory and they say, you know what, we're advising you to avoid...
Stop issuing
putting
advisories,
your
first of all.
money into this thing. People will not hear. Not many people will hear this. Many people will actually hear what is happening because this is from one person to the other. It's multi-level marketing.
Yes.
It is word of mouth. Word of mouth will be, hey, this so-and-so has made so much money. In fact, they received money. They'll even show you, look, I received my money from this organization. So go ahead and put in your money. And then the government huku in Nairobi, the regulators are issuing statements and saying,
We advise you.
We advise you to avoid this so that you don't get scammed.
What I find very interesting is if you look at the action that the government has taken on very many issues, did they remember when COVID first came to our shores? The one thing that was a constant is if you happen to have traveled into the country from some place, man, they quarantined you. That was it.
Yeah.
They put in place, and it was for your safety. There were issues that arose from it, but one understood what they were doing. Now, if the government is able to do something of that sort, other people from other parts of the world were also quarantined. This is something that's a lot easier to quarantine. You know where it's coming from. You know the medium that it's using. Surely, how can you not even demand from them and say, okay, before we allow our citizenry to participate in this, we need this, and this from you. Simple, just an inquiry. The government is the big watchdog. They are the ones who are the keepers of safety. So now, unless they're telling us that it's selective, they choose to play that role when they think it is in their interest, whatever that may be.
After the fact, that's when they come and tell you,
yes,
we are going to arrest these people. They will face the full force
of the law.
Or
other times, they let you simply fight with it and surely sort it out as you see best.
and they come back and say, people should really be careful on how they invest and where they invest.
Yes.
There's need for great financial literacy for our people.
It's
People
very important.
need to be taught.
Especially.
And this is just the government telling you this after you've lost your money.
How is that prescriptive perspective useful? It's not, they might as well just shut up because, in all honesty, some of the things that are said are not useful. It doesn't matter how much you want to stretch your mind and how much you want to give credit. It doesn't help you.
So as let's read you what the story has been written here by Daniel Wasangula of the Standard and the BBC writers. One of the companies that first of all, let's look at how this company operates. Over the years, it has been in operation. Crowd1 has amassed quite a large amount of followers, particularly from developing nations in Asia and Africa. Their journey to get these numbers has been shrouded in uncertainty. From past experience, many nations across the globe have some form of legislation against pyramid schemes or multi-level marketing schemes without an actual product to sell to the members. So they say, if you have an actual product to sell to a member, maybe hair products, maybe beauty creams and all, then there's something, this is a business. But if you don't have anything tangible, then you're not a business. This is precisely why Crowd1 says it's in the business of selling educational materials, such as the packages that would turn readers into millionaires. This keeps them legally away from the arms of authorities across the countries within which they operate. And a closer look at the affiliate companies that they claim to be in business with for revenue sharing casts more doubt onto their story. One of the companies that they claim to be affiliated with is an online betting and gambling company called Afilgo. The other is Migster, a mobile gambling platform. Both these two have no worthwhile content on their websites. The information on these sites, which are supposed to generate revenue to be split between Crowd One and investors, is made up of nothing but blurbs picked up from Wikipedia.
Essentially, that's now the hallmarks of a con.
It's not all, though. Repeatedly, Crowd One has claimed to be in partnership with known brands such as Premier Bet. Inquiries from the BBC team about this partnership were damning. So Premier Bet responded to the BBC, said, "We are not in partnership with Crowd One or Affligo." Mixter and Affligo, although listed as independent entities in partnership with Crowd One, were both set up in 2019 by Crowd One themselves. Imagine that. The other business entity supposedly in partnership with Crowd One for revenue sharing is Crowd Magazine. So far, the magazine is yet to hit newsstands, and a look into one of their issues shows that the content is generally made up of profiles of Crowd One founders with a dash of plagiarized work from other known magazines. A cursory look reveals that very little effort has gone into the magazine to make it newsworthy in any way, yet it's one of the most pushed products by Crowd One. The other companies in affiliation with Crowd One follow the same route, made up companies puffed up to appear legitimate. Through and through and through. That's how it looks like. Many are companies that they say, this is actually the business that is generating an income, and then this is how we are able to share the profit with the shareholders and those that are invested in this company.
Doesn't it resemble some of the stories we hear in this country of people who actually supply nothing, thin air, and yet will present an invoice and expect to be paid?
Yes.
And yet that is not what was asked for.
And they claim that they are in business.
Yes, and they also claim that thin air is representative of a product that was actually tendered for.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Beautiful story here done by the BBC is gone live, all right, or already. You can find it on YouTube. It's The Pyramid Kings, Crowd One. It's made by BBC Investigative Eye, BBC Africa Eye Investigations. And let's now join Ayanda Charlie, who is the person who worked on this beautiful piece. Ayanda, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much for speaking to us, and congratulations. This is a very good story and very well told. I like the style that you used to tell the story, and those that will see it will agree with me, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So first, what is the story about? If just we've been looking at it and saying, yeah, it's Crowd One. And the story that you've told about it so far is about Crowd One. But what was the investigation about, and what made you begin to investigate this particular organization?
Well, let me start with your latter question. The reason why we went into an investigation into Crowd One was essentially because of its popularity on social media, and that popularity met with a great deal of people, saying that they've had negative experiences with Crowd One, and they feel that it's a scam. So it was basically just we followed some breadcrumbs and looked deeper into it, and found that essentially, it's an audacious global pyramid scheme that's run from Europe, and essentially they are using smartphones to cheat ordinary South Africans and Africans across the continent, as well as Asia and Latin America. And what they essentially do is that they have this click advertising, and they present themselves as a network marketing company that sells educational packages. But what we found is that, behind this shiny, campaign, we looked at each sort of product that they purport to be selling or have, and we looked at, the real moneymaker here is recruitment and not actually this product. So they claim to have an educational program, and they claim to have a slew of digital products that they sort of expose their members to, which the members can then promote and make money from promoting. But we uncovered that that's not true. And in fact, Crowd One makes money through recruitment.
So what made you start investigating them? I mean, it's been in the country, in your country for a while. It's been in other countries in Africa, even in Kenya for a while. What is it that made you decide, you know what, I'm going to start looking into this, the operations of this Crowd One company?
Well, it was widely popular, right? Like you said, it seems to have been going on in our country and the rest of Africa for a while. And it was essentially how flashy that they are. Crowd One, I mean, there are many pyramid schemes at any given point, across the internet and, in every country. Crowd One is particularly flashy, right? They have a very smart and slick sort of advertising style, and they manage to attract a lot of people using that. They've had events, very glossy events, that they make sure to record and put out there in the world to promote the sort of lifestyle that they purport to be giving to Africans, which is, an upgrade and kind of pulling Africans out of poverty.
Why
Sorry,
did
I didn't
you?
get that.
Why did you get to the point where you actually determined that this was actually a pyramid scheme and not what they were purportedly advertising it to be?
Well, essentially, we, kind of we followed each sort of so they have a platform, they have a website, and they also have an app, right? And on each of these platforms, they have a list of all these companies that they say that they say they are affiliated with, and it's those companies that they encourage their members to promote, and then promise them rewards through that promotion. And essentially what we found was that each of the products, the educational program, educational package that they have, that they sell, consists of content that's been copied from existing content, which is a book on real estate by an American, Prosecution. That content was copied almost word for word, and it just kind of transplanted onto their platform, and they sell that, right? They sell this package for the most expensive. The cheapest package is 99 euros, and the most expensive is 3,999 euros.
Yep.
So they're making people pay for this package, even though you can either get it on Amazon for $10 or you can just download it online for free. Never mind that it's not the original content. We also found that some of the companies that they claim to be affiliated with have never launched. They are just kind of websites, and other companies that they claim to be affiliated with, which do exist, those partnerships aren't real. Like they claim to have partnerships with companies, they simply don't. And so that's how we found that this is actually not a real networking company. And when you look at their webinars, you find that the main thing that they are pushing for members to do is to recruit other people.
Yep.
Right? And so that becomes the main way that the members and also Crowd1 itself makes money.
You spoke to a number of people who fell victim to this particular scam, as you call it. And one of them is a lady from South Africa. She's an elderly lady, and she says she's putting all her savings into it. Just tell us her story.
Yes, so Rosina, we interviewed Rosina along with her daughter Regina, and Rosina's story is a tragic one. She had saved up. She's somebody who doesn't have a full-time job. She makes her money through selling, various things, and had managed over the course of a year to save, a good lump sum of just over 20,000 rand. She had plans of buying materials. She lives in an informal settlement, and so essentially she lives in a shack, and she and her children had intended to, at the end of the year, kind of come together and basically just better her living situation. When the time came for them to actually do this, when her children were looking for her, they couldn't find her for a while because she was hiding, and they found out that she had actually taken all that money, just over 20,000 rand, and put it all into Crowd1, buying packages for herself and her family members, hoping to make some profit on that investment. She was someone who was recruited by church members, her fellow church people, and her pastor had a very big part to play in her recruitment, and seemed to be promoting Crowd1 quite heavily in the church, and telling the church members that he himself had made hundreds of thousands of rands from Crowd1.
So, it basically just sounds like the typical story of what would happen. The people that you trust are the ones who come and sell you this, and they tell you, I have made money out of this. And you may even go and find that the pastor was doing so believing that they're actually going to make money? Or do you think the pastor had already been recruited and was part of the scam?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have no proof. I mean, we haven't spoken to the pastor himself. We didn't get his side of the story. He hasn't even really been identified. So we have no way of following up with the pastor and understanding what his motives are. But we are told by Regina and her mom, Rosina and Regina, that the pastor claims to have hundreds of thousands of rands himself, but they had never seen any proof of that, right? So it's either, he actually did, in which case, why wouldn't there be proof that you've made this much money? Or he didn't have any of that money and just hoped to make money by recruiting others and was essentially, selling dreams.
Can I ask this question? In Kenya, in this part of the world, for a long time, we've had preachers who are proponents of the prosperity gospel. Do you also have similar people in your neck of the woods?
Absolutely. No, certainly. It's I think at this stage it's a continental phenomenon, right? We certainly have such pastors. They're called charismatic churches, aren't they?
So what that means is that you're talking about groups of people who are already poised and positioned to receive, because from everything that we've read and we hear, Crowd One is a prosperity gospel.
It is, and I don't necessarily want to conflate, Crowd One, into, the church and kind of like religious discourse, because they simply don't make those claims, but they do promise to pull people out of poverty, right? And that they are, they've come to the continent to give access to the kind of digital entrepreneur space to Africans who, previously were not allowed or were not given the opportunities to be a part of that boom. So they certainly have promises, right? Like they have their evangelism is particularly about pulling people out of poverty. And I think that leaves opportunities for anyone else who has a platform who already uses that kind of rhetoric, whether religious or not, to then take advantage, of that message and use it, in a way that is appropriate for their space and their audience.
And when you did the story, you looked at how much people are paying on average, and then you tried to calculate how much then it's possible that this organization has made, or those at the top of the organization have made. Just take us through that.
Yes. So essentially, and I mean, I'm kind of off book right now, and the numbers out of my head, but essentially, Crowd One was ranked among the top 1,000 most visited sites, right, on by Alexa, and they had a great deal of people visiting the site, easily in the hundreds of thousands. And what we simply did was go, well, let's say, the minimum of that. Let's say only about 10% of those people actually signed up to the app, or were recruited themselves. And what we find is that they're well into the hundreds of thousands of euros, if not, at least $1 million. If you look at the minimum of people who might have bought the minimum package, which is 99 euros, the cost of the minimum cost of the smallest package is 99 euros.
Yeah.
So that's, so that's a good. And if you multiply like 99 euros by 100,000 people, you get a good sum.
Yeah.
But there's no way of actually knowing how much they would have made.
And you cannot really tell. But you were able to write to them, and you got quite a voluminous response from the organizers. How many pages was it? How many questions did they satisfiably respond to?
So we sent them, the entire, the script itself, the film, and they were able to see our claims. We got a great deal of, it was legal documents, I guess, just like them kind of trying to maybe either drown us, in paperwork. But I think a better way to illustrate how much we got back in terms of a reply is that we couldn't at some point download the file from email. It was too big. So that gives you an idea of how much we got. But essentially, we were able to narrow that reply down to a few key points.
Okay. And who are these few people?
the key points.
Yeah.
Well, number one, they told us that they are a scam. So it's essentially, they deny being a scam or a pyramid scheme, and they claim to not break any South African laws. They call themselves a legitimate network company, and that they say that they offer, just legitimate products to its members and enables them to earn money marketing those products. They also said that they don't make money from recruitment, but only from these sales. Crowd One also stresses that all their products are genuine, right? Despite the proof that we put forward to say this, these products are not genuine.
Mm-hmm.
They also say that the educational packages are expanding. You'll find that in the film, we find that the content that's on their website that you supposedly have access to in terms of the educational packages only amounts to about 1 hour and 45 minutes. At least the content that you get when you buy a black package. So they say that content is going to expand. They say that Mixer, the gaming platform, which they say is under the kind of umbrella of associated companies, will launch this year. It's been in perpetual launch for a long time and is in partnership with an established company, Emerge Gaming. They say the rewards are, the rewards and the bonus schemes are not marketed as shares or investments.
Yep.
And essentially the leaders say, deny, being affiliated with any previous. You'll know that we in the documentary, we link some of the leaders to previous pyramid schemes. Those leaders deny being a part of those leaders being Johann Holstein and Jonas Werner. And the rest of them say they've always attempted to stay clear from these schemes. The South African members, being Angelo Black and Masilo Mokone, Angelo Black says he is honored to be a leader in Crowd One. I'm not sure what to make of that.
Yep.
And Masilo Mokone, who goes as Mr. Smile, says he's just a member of the network and not a manager. We did not get a reply or response from Renze Dilstra.
When you confronted them with your findings, how did they respond?
Excuse me?
When you confronted them with your findings, how did they respond?
Well, it wasn't a direct. We didn't speak to them directly. We've only been able to speak to them via, their legal representation, whom we sent our findings to. And essentially, the responses we got were, the legal responses which I just listed with you.
Did you reach out to the government and the regulators in South Africa or any other part of Africa or any other part of the world?
So what we found is that in South Africa, there are investigations happening, right? So this happened outside of our, we didn't campaign for this to happen. I think we found out during the investigation. And in other countries, we also found that, governments in Paraguay, in New Zealand, in the Philippines, in Vietnam, Mauritius, Burundi, Namibia, Gabon, and the Ivory Coast have all issued warnings against Crowd One or banned it outright. So we haven't approached any authorities, but we've seen, as the months have gone by, that there is some movement happening with the authorities in terms of investigating them or warning against them or banning them outright.
Is there any history of successful investigation and prosecution of such schemes in South Africa?
Look, prosecution, I know. I can't be sure that that's happening. I know that there's currently another scheme that I won't name that's being, investigated and is actually being brought to book. I think they have countersued. Nothing comes to mind of a previous scheme that's actually, led to arrest and any kind of reparation. Typically what happens in South Africa, there will be a warning. These pyramid schemes would kind of, as they always do, collapse. A few of the leaders will be, taken to court or arrested, but no prosecutions as yet, to my memory.
All right, Ayanda, we thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. Ayanda Charlie is a South African investigative journalist. She's the one who's worked on a piece along with the team at BBC Africa Eye. The piece is Unmasking the Pyramid Kings. It's already up on YouTube. And what other platforms can we find it on, Ayanda?
So it's definitely on YouTube. There are shorter versions on the BBC website itself. It's a 1 minute and 34-second preview. There will be other shorter packages coming along from other affiliated sites, but that's to be confirmed. But right now, you can definitely watch it on YouTube.
Thank you very much. And you can also read the story on page 4 and 5 of the Standard today. Crowd One get-rich-quick scheme that has left dozens in poverty. It's already been published on the Standard this morning. You can get your copy and read on that. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. Time for us to take a break for our KTN Home audience. We'll be back shortly.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
4 minutes to 8 o'clock. So, nice piece done there. It's already online. You can find it on YouTube. It's the story of Crowd One, and it's unmasking the pyramid schemes. And this is what has been done by the BBC Africa Eye investigative team. It talks about this particular business organization. There have been various warnings that have been issued by regulatory authorities, not just in the country, but across the world, about this particular one. There are investigations, like Ayanda is saying, that have been conducted, have been ongoing in South Africa. Investigations have been launched in Paraguay, in Vietnam. This is a global thing, but people have really fallen for such. How do we avoid people falling for such things? I mean, what is it that you can do? Even you as a person, I mean, how would you tell that this is a scheme and this is legit?
Ask yourself the simple question: what is it that predisposes people to these get-rich-quick schemes? It's usually poverty.
It's poverty.
And
You
a
wanna get out
complete
of it.
and an absence of opportunities. So you have a problem, you can see it, but at the same time, you can see people who don't have your problem and they live in the same country. And why they don't have some of your problems, that these are economic problems, and economic problems are sorted out with just simply having money. Why I brought in the discussion around the church is this. A church is an influencer, the institution itself. And there are very many churches that also preach what we call the prosperity gospel. Essentially, what they tell you is all you need to do, and how they do it is you give a tithe, you give an offering, and that offering is multiplied. That's essentially is the message. Now, it's actually a very serious diversion from what is actually taught in the scriptures. But the bottom line is this: there is a situation, a social situation that predisposes certain people to this. Because I was looking at the list of people and the countries where these schemes have worked, all right? New Zealand, from what I see here, is the one country which really doesn't fall into the country of a poor country. But still, somebody would like to make their lives better. Now, many of the other countries perhaps the government has instituted a provision that protects their people from such extremities of poverty. The other countries don't have such systems. Their public is exposed to very, very extreme conditions of poverty and want.
So you get into something, you believe that you're going to make money, and you want to make money before it collapses.
And before that, you'll find they're also predisposed towards religious organizations where they believe that God can actually help alleviate these problems, and God does. But when you throw in money and it's a pastor talking to you about it, and this is somebody who you trust almost implicitly, then somebody finds themselves in a position where they're actually trapped, and they may not even know they're trapped.
They don't know.
No.
They cannot, they really can't tell that they are in the trap.
Not really.
This is where the government also comes in, because this is the role of, when you notice that many Ponzi schemes are operating in your country and people are becoming more and more gullible, then you need to come up with measures to make sure that the most vulnerable are protected. And this is it. It's those that are completely vulnerable that will end up falling into this very easily. How do you create awareness? How do you ensure that they don't? How do you make sure that even the Ponzi schemes that try to operate under the radar, you have enough intelligence to be able to smoke them out and shut them down? Role of the government. Keep it right here. We have more conversations coming up in the next hour. We will be talking about COVID-19 and what needs to happen to curb the spread of COVID-19. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Traffic.
So, Thika Road, Muthaiga is a mess. Somebody says they've been stuck there on the same spot for 15 minutes now. And also someone is urging all drivers along Thika Road heading towards CBD, avoid service lane by all means from KCA, Pangani, Mtalala Hapo. Well, you've just woken up. You don't Lala Hapo again. Wayaki Way jump starts at Uthiru Junction heading to Kabete Police and then coming all the way into town. You know, there's all the work that's happening on Wayaki Way, the road works that's happening on Mombasa Road. That is going to affect traffic for days to come, for months to come. So if you know that you're operating from any of those routes, you clearly will need to exercise a lot of patience on the routes. As well, on Kiambu Road into town, it's been a mess from as early as 6 a.m. It's going to get busy, especially at this time when everybody else wants to get onto the road. What's happening on Gong Road going into town? It's busy at the lights, but it's moving. Mombasa Road, we've just talked about it. Work that's happening there. Well, it's all a lot of nonsense that's happening on the road there this morning. Jogoo Road into town, and as well as Juja Road into town. Getting busy. Anything else that you think we need to make everybody know about? Spice FM KE on Twitter and 40127 is our SMS number.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who...
So we are right here, 2.5 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's a Situation Room. It's in the room this morning is Eric Latif, and C.T. Muga Nduoko is still away. She's unwell. She'll be joining us in a few days' time to come. CT, as we begin the hour, what is today's proverb?
If the cockroach wants rule over the chicken, then it must hire the fox as a bodyguard.
All right. So if the cockroach wants to do?
Rule, the chicken, rule.
Yep.
Then it must hire the fox as a bodyguard.
Oh, okay. Or the other thing, like I said, is once you are a chicken, you realize that you can get other food apart from eating cockroaches. You can eat worms. But for you to guard yourself against the what? Fox. Elect the cockroach as your leader.
So you're saying the cockroach will provide the fox with employment?
Yep. You elect the cockroach as your leader and your threat is sorted. Fox will not attack you. And you have other sources of food.
I will give it more thought.
So let's talk about now COVID-19. We talked about how COVID-19 has been spreading around the countries and what's happening in these countries. Let's just look at the headlines over the weekend. Belgium announces return to national lockdown as figures suggest it has the highest COVID infection rate in Europe. Germany to enter 4-week lockdown from November, Chancellor Merkel confirms. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson announces lockdown measures lasting a month in England. France returns to national lockdown, a new surge in coronavirus cases. That is what is happening in especially the Western Hemisphere and Europe in particular. This is what's happening. Now, there is a term then that has come into operation. This is circuit breaking. So the kind of operation or meaning of the circuit breaker term is that gadget that is there, the switches in your house that... in case there is a short circuit somewhere, in case there's a power surge somewhere in the line, then the circuit breaker goes off. You identify the problem, isolate the problem, sort out the problem, and then you switch it on, back on. This is helping you. Basically, it's like a fuse, or we can just look at it as the fuse in a plug. Many plugs come with a fuse. If there's a surge in current, or if there's a problem somewhere in the line, maybe with your gadget. There's a short circuit somewhere. The fuse goes off so that there is no power coming into the gadget. What you're basically trying to do is you stop electricity from continuing to flow until you sort out the problem, and then you switch it back on. Sometimes the same thing that happens even when we have a blackout. There's an issue, maybe wires za stima zimeshikana, and then a fuse, the circuit breaker somewhere goes off, and it calls on the Kenya Power guys to come and see where is the problem, identify the problem, sort out the problem, switch that power back on. Sometimes you are saying, in some cases where we have seen some serious proper lockdown, this is a case where the guys come and remove the transformer. There's no power. Transformer gone. So this is not circuit breaking. This is basically just saying no more power here for a while. So why is it the issue of a circuit breaker conversation coming into COVID-19? What does it mean?
What I think it's more of what it implies. It implies that there's a flow of electricity that perhaps in the quantity and the manner in which it's being supplied is actually not desired. So the only way you can halt it, the only way you can bring it to an end is with the circuit breaker. Now, the details of the circuit breaker perhaps are what we need to look into and to ask, okay, with the circuit breaker, what is it? Is it permanent? Is it periodical? What's the plan about it? And honestly, what do you expect to achieve? Because the initial lockdown was precisely that. At least that's what it represented, breaking that particular flow. Now, we keep talking about the new normal. And when you talk about the new normal, you're saying not that COVID will come to an abrupt end, but that we will have arrived at a lovely MOU with it where we can coexist with it without being a constant threat over our heads. So, does a circuit breaker represent all this, or what is it really, and how is it envisioned to be?
So every time you have a surge, circuit breaker goes off, then you identify the cause of the surge, you deal with it, and then you switch the power back on.
Yes.
And then you continue and until next time.
And I'm asking, is that really just it?
Is that it? And
Yes.
does it sort out our issues?
Yes, and if you look at, because now we are in November, so we've had months of COVID. Are there patterns that have emerged? Are there things that we probably previously didn't understand that we now understand, so we can actually bring these processes to a halt, not just mitigate against them for the time being, but ensure that they don't recur again, so that all we have to deal with are those processes and things or occurrences that we couldn't have foreseen. That's what we deal with.
Yeah.
But if we're dealing with things that we can foresee and things which we know how to mitigate against, then we aren't really making any progress, are we?
Let's bring in the experts, and to speak to us this morning is Dr. Githinji Gitahi. Dr. Gitahi is the Group Chief Executive Officer of Amref Health Africa, and Dr. Mercy Korir, Standard Group's editor in charge of health and science, joining us on the line. Doctors, good morning.
Good morning, Eric and City.
Good morning.
Good to have you both. And as we begin this conversation, I'd just like to recap what the latest figures that we have from the Ministry of Health announced yesterday. Total number of cases so far in the country, 55,877. Yesterday's cases, 685 confirmed in 24 hours from a sample size of 4,433, and 17 more people died between Saturday and yesterday, now bringing our total death toll to 1,013. Number of people admitted in hospitals, in various isolation facilities as well, 1,271. And those that have tested positive and are still positive but undergoing home-based care, 4,808. 53 patients are in ICU. These are high numbers. What do you make of them, Dr. Githinji?
Well, I think the first thing I would like to say is that the confirmed cases are laboratory confirmed cases. We know, of course, that there are many more infected people. We've seen studies in Kenya looking at people who may have antibodies or kind of signs or footprints that have had exposure to the virus. And they are much higher than, of course, the 55,000. The 55,000 are the ones we've managed to test through tracing and tested and confirmed they're positive. Now, the most important thing therefore to look at is rather not the numbers, it's the trend. And the trend has actually been going up now since the first dip. We had a good dip post-August, September. And after that, we have now seen this going up. Two things, positivity rate is going up, and the number of hospitalizations are going up, and the number of deaths out of those confirmed are going up. Remember, even when you talk about deaths, you're only counting the ones that die in hospital. Any ones that die in the community are considered police cases. So they may not be even in this number because we've not started doing post-mortem COVID testing. So they're rising. So my thought is that the numbers are rising. We expect them to continue rising. They're rising more in the outer counties, actually faster rate than in Nairobi. And therefore, we just need to go back and ask ourselves, are the counties prepared for any surge that may require hospitalization or hospital care? And how do we actually go back to thinking about reducing the force of transmission? What measures can we take to reduce the force of transmission?
Dr. Masi, what do you make of the numbers and the cases so far?
Okay. So I think for me it is no surprise that we are seeing that there is an increase in the number of cases, because if you can trace it back, you'll see that these numbers are rising since when the government eased the restriction measures, when the curfew was being eased out, when the number of people who could go to gatherings was increased. So you see that the trend is gradually increasing from that. So for me, it is a no-brainer that we are seeing the kind of numbers that we are seeing. And so if we want to control the numbers, then we have to rethink what we need to do. And we have to now really rethink it more critically, because here we have a balance between saving lives and saving livelihoods. Because we know that the reason why all these measures were being eased was so as to allow people to start making a living, so that people can start going about their economic activities. But now we are seeing that there's a cost to life. So for me, it is about going back to where we are seeing the numbers starting to rise, seeing what did we do at that time, and what can we do differently from that time that, one, will save lives, and two, also save livelihoods. So it is not really just about the numbers that going up. We expect that, but what do we do about these numbers so that we can, stop a further increase?
Dr. Masi, do I understand you to say that we could have predicted this surge?
Yeah, we could have, definitely, because remember, we've been saying all along that the virus does not move. It is people who move. So if we are gathering, if we are moving from one corner of Kenya to the other, and it is no brainer then that the numbers would increase. So one, it's looking about what can we do differently. And as Dr. Gibinji says, there is that our counties prepared, or what can we do to prepare our counties to be able to respond, one, to the number of people in home-based care, and two, those who will need hospitalization. So for me, it is just about going to the next step. What do we need to do next to save lives and to save livelihoods, not one at the expense of the other one?
But when we talk about what next to do and the next steps to take, is this not something we've been talking about right from the very beginning when COVID reached our shores? Is this not a discussion we've had? So are we having the same discussion, meaning we're not moving, we're exactly at the same spot we've been throughout?
Yeah.
See, this conversation, we've had it since March, where in this situation room, we've always been a step ahead of the government in terms of our thinking. So I think, let's just have this conversation about what's next. And we hope that the government and the authorities will actually now move faster than what we saw during the first initial surge of COVID cases.
But Dr. Masi, there's what next as in what we've seen being done. There's what we know needs to be done or ought to be done. And then there's what in reality can actually get done. Now, how do you merge the three?
I think for me, what can actually be done, some of the things are low-hanging fruit. Political rallies and gatherings, for example, are they necessary? No. Our religious gatherings, our events and things like that, can we reduce the number of people who are there? Can we move back to online? I mean, some of these things are very low-hanging fruits for me in terms of what we can do next, and they're practical. I mean, if millions of people are going to be exposed to COVID-19 because we're having a political gathering, which one is more important, this political agenda or the lives of people who you will need for this political agenda? So for me, some of the things that we need to do are very low-hanging fruits. The difficult ones now will be the technical things where we need a lot more resources and a lot more technical people on the ground. So those ones are the ones that now, if we could get rid of the low-hanging fruit, then it would be now easy to focus attention and resources on those technical things that will actually save lives.
Do you think we could legally criminalize deliberate infections, meaning people who deliberately cause infections and people who themselves cause infections, knowing full well that they are COVID positive? Do you think if we made it an offense punishable by law, we might get some results? Dr. Gitai, what do you think?
You know, we've had incidences where, people, especially you've seen in South Korea, we've seen here also, we saw this happen in, with one of the deputy governors from Coast Province, where the state attempted to actually criminalize infecting others knowingly. Yep. And that is obviously a route that anyone can follow. You can actually sue for that. You can put a civil case for that. So continuing to actually, talk to people to ensure they understand that when you actually go to a place and you know you're positive and you put other people at risk, and that actually being chargeable by law is important for people to understand. It happens in other areas of infectious diseases as well, where you knowingly expose somebody. That could be a criminal case. But I think the issue we really need to focus on is the fact that there will be no, I have had you, talk to Masay and ask about why we're not doing the right thing. The thing is that when you have a pandemic, it's very difficult to know what is the right thing at what time, because the virus is always ahead of you. So you take measures based on the information you have at that particular time. Now, the first partial, because Kenya never went to a lockdown, we never really went to a lockdown, but the first partial lockdown that we had, where some of the businesses were closed, people were still allowed to move, though there were some areas with cessation of movement, had a huge impact on us actually reducing the force of transmission. Remember, the end game in trying to manage a pandemic like this is not to end the virus. The only way to end the virus is to get a vaccine, so that you vaccinate everyone and then you create herd immunity and the disease dies off. And then you maintain the vaccination over years, because we've seen that in measles. That's what we do. But now, after you do that fast control and you see the cases coming down, you then open up. You open up. That's inevitable, because the aim of the partial lockdown is not to end the virus. It is for you to protect your health system. And therefore, when you think you're protected and prepared enough, you open up. And when you see another surge, you should not be ashamed to go back and say, okay, we now want to. It's not like you made a mistake to open. It is that now you close again and you do what you guys were discussing earlier, called a circuit breaker. Your circuit breaker is really to break the force of transmission, so that now you protect the health system, and and then after that you continue to reopen the economy. It is kind of stop, start, stop, start. It's not something that you made a mistake by closing the first time. No, it's not.
When I listen to this conversation, I'm getting worried that government officials will want to jump onto the international bandwagon and the catchphrases of the time. Remember, there's a time when the catchphrases were protocols. We have the WHO protocols, and we've come up with our own protocols. We have international protocols that are in place, and we have come up with our own protocols. In fact, we've already published them, and we are sharing them. Now, it's going to be this one. But at the same time, the government not doing what it could do, what it has power to do, which is, even if we were to go into now a circuit breaker, which is just some lockdown for a definite amount of time, what is it that should be happening in the background? I'd expect that what should be happening is what could have happened in the first place, which is looking at your capacity, your preparedness, looking at your healthcare workers, looking at the projected numbers, because the experts are coming up with models and projecting those numbers. So what is it that you would do to make sure that you can address those numbers? But Dr. Masi, we talked about this in March, in April, in May, in June, and saying at this time, as the government is telling us to do this, we hope that it's in the background, it's also putting in measures in place. Looking at the situation now, where we have 1,271 patients admitted in hospital and 53 of them in ICU, and already the healthcare system is feeling the pressure. Was there enough preparation put in place?
I think preparation, from what I've seen, is a continuous process. It's a process where you improve from one step to the next, so that because what we knew in March, April is not what we know now. I've met healthcare workers who had met in March, April, and I can see that their confidence in managing COVID-19 is much better improved now compared to back then. So there's been some progress, I must say, in terms of preparedness of the healthcare workers themselves, in terms of their psyche and psychological well-being to manage the pandemic. They know what is expected of them. They have an understanding of it, and that we've seen that the virus has not been as bad as it has been in Europe. So we've seen that there's some progress. So that said, in terms of the personnel being prepared, we need some things, some infrastructural adjustments in our health systems or in our health facilities in order to manage the pandemic. One is availability of oxygen, of medical oxygen for people who would need supplemental oxygen, because there are people who will just need to be on oxygen for a while, then they go home. And then there are those people who will be in critical care, who will need now more intensive care, more serious care in terms of even what the equipment and the facilities are and the personnel that are there. So when you look at all of this, for me, I look at it as these things have to be addressed at the same time, and not one, then you move to the next, because people are presenting in different stages of the disease. So for me, my focus would be where at the most critical point of our healthcare system, are we able to handle the number of people that might be in need of healthcare services at that time? And unfortunately, as we're seeing now, we are not yet there. The other day I was talking to one of my colleagues, a doctor actually, who had to move one of their relatives from Nairobi to Nakuru because they needed critical care. So that tells you that our system, either we are getting to a point where we are overwhelmed, or our facilities are not enough to handle those at the most critical care of COVID-19. So for me, it's for the government to actually look at that. And that's, I think, what Dr. Gibinji is talking about, preparing your health systems to be able to handle the cases, not that you are working on, getting rid of all the infections or all the COVID-19 cases, but you want to be in such a position that when people need care at the farthest end of that continuum, at the critical care stage, then you're able to offer that kind of care. And if you are not able to do that, then we will see that we will lose people to COVID-19, and we lose a lot more people to COVID-19.
Dr. Kivenji, are we at that point where we can say we are able to deal with the cases that are coming at us on a daily basis?
No, we are not. We have seen the surge overwhelm capacity. Remember, maybe a very quick review here for our viewers and listeners. That number one is that infections in themselves are not the problem. So seeing 1,000 people getting infected a day, or 2,000, or we know they are more infected, is not really the problem. The problem is, out of these that are infected, how many will require the health system? Because many of the ones infected are asymptomatic. We've seen most of the people infected, 93% of them, or up to 90% of them, are asymptomatic. No symptoms, no fever, no cough, no difficulty in breathing. And therefore, the most important thing for knowing about these is to ensure that you can actually ask them to isolate so that you reduce their chance of infecting others. The ones that we really are worried about and that require the circuit breaker are the ones who require hospital care or health system, whether they need to go to the hospital for oxygen, ventilator, ICU. And we've seen Kenya has very few ICU beds. If we're talking about probably about 400 beds of ICU, remember these beds are total. They have to be shared by people who need ICU, who don't have COVID, and people who have COVID. Also remember that the COVID beds cannot be in the main ICU. So you're actually saying that the ICU beds available for COVID patients have to be removed from the main ICU beds so that you don't infect other patients. So that means that the beds then available for COVID, for ICU, are much fewer than the 400, unless you're saying that you're occupying all the beds for the country. So basically, we're saying that we still need to do more to increase capacity for taking care of COVID patients. We need to talk about oxygen, as Mercy has done. We need to talk about what we call pulse oximetry to measure the amount of oxygen in the patients all the way down to the dispensary and all the way down to the health center. I feel like the challenge we're having is we are focusing too much on the COVID hospitals instead of devolving and decentralizing capacity so that the people in health centers are also able to take care of the mild and moderate symptoms. So we are not where we should be in taking care of the people who need care, and that's where we must implement some circuit breaker, reduce the numbers, continue to build capacity, and then reopen the economy slowly. It's going to be waves and cycles of that kind of intervention for some time.
Well, we'll talk about the circuit breaker after this break so that we try and understand what the circuit breaker means, what is required then if a circuit breaker is to be implemented. Remember, the President will be meeting with the Council of Governors this Wednesday to discuss the surge in COVID-19 numbers and to see what it is that the national and county governments can do to address this and to help those that need healthcare and health services. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We're having a conversation this morning around COVID-19, the preparedness and what needs to be done by both the government and the citizens. Speaking with us is Dr. Gethenji Gitahi. He's the Group Chief Executive Officer of Amref Health Africa. And Dr. Marcy Korir, she is from the Standard Group. She's the Group Editor in charge of Health and Science. 26 minutes after 8, we are on Spice FM on KTN Home and we are online. And we'll be back shortly after we take a look at the weather and traffic.
Tonight on the Great Kenyan Bake Off.
Nayo, hapa na hapa.
It's the first of 2 dessert weeks, and Heat 1 are about to face an interesting twist in the technical that will really test their taste buds.
It's going to be fun.
Don't miss the fun as the bakers put their best construction skills on display,
instincts,
to create a very colorful showstopper.
I'm so tired.
The Great Kenyan Bake Off, brought to you by Unga Limited, inspiring a nation to bake.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
At 28 minutes after 8, skies in Nairobi. Light rain expected throughout the day today. 24 degrees highs and lows of 17. Nakuru mostly cloudy for now, rising to 23 degrees and later on at night 15 degrees Celsius. Nyeri, it's currently at 16 degrees. It's going to rise to 22. Light rain expected during the day and later on it will come down to 14 degrees Celsius. Eldoret, what's happening there? Expect partly sunny skies today, highs of 23 and lows of 13. Right now, it's mostly cloudy at 14 degrees Celsius. It's warming up in Kisumu at 19. It's going to rise to 29, partly sunny skies, and then it'll drop again later on at 9 to 19. Kakamega, currently at 19, mostly cloudy morning. Expect sunny skies throughout the day at 28, and then at night, dropping down to 15. Malindi is mostly cloudy right now at 19 degrees. Expect sunny skies throughout the day, later on at 27, and then later at night it'll come down to 16. In Kampala, Uganda, light rain at 21 degrees presently, sunny skies later on in the day at 26, and then at night 17. And in Dar es Salaam, Uganda, Tanzania, up right now it's a light rain at 23. Expected during the day, light rains to continue, and 28 degrees will be highs in Dar es Salaam. In Johannesburg, South Africa, it's partly sunny right now at 12 degrees. Scattered rain showers throughout the day at 21, and then later on at night, it will be partly cloudy, dropping down to 12. In Lagos, Nigeria, currently, light rains at 25 degrees, going to rise to 31 and then drop again to 24. And in Kinshasa, DRC, you have mostly cloudy morning at 22, and then it's going to rise all the way to 30 and then drop back again to 22. Beijing in China, cool morning, but it's sunny at 13 degrees. Expect sunny skies, but it'll still be at 13. And then later on in the night, the lows will be 1 degree Celsius. Paris, France, currently at 18, and then it's going to rise to 19 and then drop down all the way to 9 again. And then in New York, currently at 8 degrees with clear skies. We're going to have sunny skies through the day and highs of 8 and then lows of 5. We'll be looking at other cities of the world in subsequent bulletins.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
Someone is saying because of all the traffic on the road, because of some parts of the country that are still raining, Wilbury owners, this is your chance to shine as you ferry people and you avoid the traffic. Well, what is happening on Thika Road? It's been busy from the morning. It's also still busy. Traffic is slowing down outbound just before Kangemi, but because there's an accident between two matatus. Thika Road coming into town, busy at all the usual hotspots. Kiambu Road coming into town, busy at the usual hotspots as well. And then we're talking about Thika Road. You get busy as you approach. As you approach the city center, it gets busy all the way in Thika Road. And then Mombasa Road coming to the city, it's also busy along Mombasa Road, along General Motors coming all the way to the first roundabout at Nyayo Stadium and going on into Huru Highway. Wayakiwe coming into town is busy as you get to the roundabout. Also, Ngong Road into town is moving smoothly. Jogoo Road gets busy at Landis as usual, and Juja Road is still as busy. Anything that you think we ought to alert everybody else about, Spice FM KE on Twitter, 40127 is our SMS number.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
27 minutes to 9. Conversation continues. In the room this morning is Eric Latif and C.T. Muga. And joining us online is Dr. Gethenji Gitai. He is the Group CEO of Amref Health Africa. And Dr. Marcy Koriri. She is the Group Editor at the Standard Group in charge of health and sciences. Looking at COVID-19 and this new buzzword globally, circuit breaker. So just take us through the circuit breaker terminology and how it's then being applied globally, Dr. Gethenji.
Well, the circuit breaker is really just terminology. It's obviously just a buzzword, but it started off much earlier in Singapore, about April. That's when we saw the first use of this terminology, but it's now been used again largely in the UK. The reference of the circuit breaker is an analogy similar to electricity, where if you have a surge in electricity, instead of allowing it to destroy your fridge, your microwave, and your other equipment, there's a circuit breaker that's put on in your system so that if the surge comes, it shuts off the electricity and protects the equipment. So it's just an analogy to say, if we are having COVID, I say the most important thing on COVID is to look at the force of transmission and the percentage of people requiring hospitalization or hospital care. So if you see that and maybe I go back to say that when you talk about flattening the curve, this is exactly what we're talking about. So even when you talk about circuit breaker, a circuit breaker is a flattening the curve strategy. It is saying we are seeing the curve is rising. We are seeing that by rising, maybe our level of the health system is going to be surpassed and overwhelmed. So let us circuit break so that we flatten the curve and make sure that we don't go above our health system as we wait to probably reinvest in it or just reduce the numbers over time. And you could actually do that multiple times. If you are not able to raise your health system capacity fast enough, you could use circuit breaker measures over time to reduce the force of transmission and to interrupt the force of transmission. And you don't have to do it once. You could do it again and again and again. So you could say, right now we are seeing 600, 1,000 cases a day. We want to make sure these come down to 200 or 300 because we think we can handle those. So you put a circuit breaker. When the cases come down, you then reopen. And when they rise again, you put another circuit breaker. So it can be multiple interventions. But it's really saying stop the force of transmission to stop overwhelming the health system. And you could actually do it over and over again.
What are the parameters? What is it that you use to tell that you've reached a level where you can switch back on the power?
So the issue here is that even before you start the circuit breaker, you're looking at why are you doing it. The first reason I said earlier, you're doing it because you're probably having too many people needing hospitalization or needing hospital care, too many people needing ICU, too many people needing ventilators beyond the capacity you can afford at that particular time. And this is not a Kenya problem. We've seen globally that health systems have been overwhelmed and unable to manage cases. So it's not, we need to tell our listeners and viewers, it's not a Kenya problem. It is actually a pandemic issue. So the parameters are, if you know that you have so far probably 200 beds of ICU, or you want to make sure that you have minimum numbers of people hospitalized, then you know projections that actually you know that if you have 1,000 cases, that's why, all the data we have should be used to kind of make these projections. That when you have 1,000 cases or you have this rate of positivity, this is the number of people expected to go to hospital for hospitalization. And there are new counties also coming, so you also have to account for the ones that are coming that you have not already had. Then when you do the circuit breaker, you say we are going to reduce our positivity rate down maybe up to 5%. When you approach that 5%, you could then open up. And when the positivity rate starts rising again towards 10 and above 10, then you could do another circuit breaker. So you could use multiple parameters, number of people in hospital, and also positivity rate. But then you also have to couple these up with a very robust strategy of contact tracing, surveillance, and testing. They have to be coupled together, and also data and data analysis. Yes. You can't do it blindly.
Thank you. If we look at where we stand right now as a country, in areas that are easy to define and probably determine, like the data that we have and which we trust will inform us on the way forward, would you say that we are competing favorably with the virus? Are we in a position to actually provide a clear and positive way forward to our citizenry?
Well, that's a difficult question because I don't think anyone can answer that question succinctly as you've asked it. The issue is that, as I said earlier, in a pandemic, fear is part of it, panic is part of it, and the virus is always ahead of you. So when you think you managed it, when we saw the wave or the curve of Nairobi and Mombasa coming down, we thought the national curve was coming down. And it wasn't. What was happening was that the COVID virus coronavirus came first to the urbanized towns, that was Nairobi, Mombasa. And as they were going through their first peak to come down, the other counties, Western Gishu, Eldoret, the other semi-urbanized or second-generation urbanized cities, Kisumu, Eldoret, Nakuru, were also starting their peak. So it's always ahead of you. And right now, I cannot tell you that we know exactly which the next set of counties to have acceleration is going to be. But what we need to do is that we need to increase what we call precision public health. That when you see a positive case, you can trace it back to where it came from. We know that most of the cases come from household clusters. They're households and they're community clusters. They're a church. There is this and that. So this data is needed at a very granular level, at a sub-county level. What I know now is that most of our data and our surveillance capacity has remained at the national and county level. The government needs to work to devolve this capacity to the sub-county so the data is very granular. Then I can be able to answer that question. Right now, I do not think we have enough data at some county level that we are collecting enough. We have demotivated staff in many of the sub-counties because they're not being supported to go out and trace and survey and trace. We have fears of PPEs. We have fears of people getting infected. And therefore, the tracing and surveillance activities at sub-county level are suboptimal. And therefore, we are lacking a big chunk of the controlling the virus at that level.
Dr. Mercy, given that you are a media person, do you think, if I were to refer to the variable of fear that Dr. Githinji has mentioned, what part have we played, from your perspective, in alleviating these fears or in bringing them to a rational perspective where they're easy to understand and to function with?
Okay, that sounds like a difficult question to answer because, well, I think we have all been learning along the way as we reported COVID, as the government tried to contain COVID, as the public was coming to terms with COVID. So I think it's been, we've all been learning and evolving and moving along. And I wouldn't point fingers to anyone really, but I think everyone has played a role in either alleviating fear or fueling the fear and the stigma around COVID-19, probably in the way that we are reporting the COVID stories. When you listen to the Ministry of Health and say, you will die, that puts a little some fear in people. Then along the way, people stopped fearing and they stopped caring. As recent as this weekend, there are people who still don't believe that it's COVID. So I think it's a mixed variety of feelings for everyone around. And we've all played a part in it, maybe as media being the channel in which we take that information from the ministry and give it to Mwananchi. Then Mwananchi is in fear or stigma. But the thing that I've seen, and for me what is encouraging, is that the healthcare workers, the healthcare personnel are confident now. There is a bit of anxiety about them contracting the fear, but when it comes to managing people with COVID-19, I think I've seen a level of confidence that was not there initially. So I'm hoping that these people will be the change ambassadors, the people who would deliver the message now at the lower levels, as Dr. Githinji puts it, at the granular level, so that people can be able to understand from those peripheral counties that initially had not been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, that they would understand what it is all about and how to protect themselves, so that now we start having a little bit more community engagement, as opposed to here before it was a top-down kind of management of COVID-19. And I think that has been what has been the problem, because people down here have just been bombarded by information, but there's no channel of community feeding back to...
Mercy, let me ask a simple question. How many stories of hope have you seen in this COVID time that has been out in the media? Because I'm sure there must be stories of hope. How often do we bring them out and say, these are the positive things that we see coming out of this, despite the really dreary and dark picture that we constantly put out about COVID?
And hope about the disease itself, not about the economic situation.
No, just the disease, not the economic situation.
So got it recovered, and this is what they went through.
Yes, meaning sharing testimonies, saying things that would lift people's hearts, because this narrative of people don't believe, I actually don't believe it, but that's another discussion. I don't believe that they don't believe there's COVID. I believe they'd rather not believe there's COVID.
Or they choose not to believe that
there's COVID. It's too much of a burden to accept that there's COVID.
Mm-hmm. You've really put me on the spot.
Mercy, that was not my intention. I was actually hoping to benefit from your vast knowledge on this subject, and and hoping that our listeners and viewers will also share in that vast knowledge that you have on this particular subject.
No. I think I would agree that we've had very little or very few. Like when you asked, and I was trying to just think of the stories that we've had about COVID-19, there have been very few stories about hope. I think for me, the only stories on hope that we have had out there is maybe on the innovations around COVID-19, where we're seeing people trying to do things differently to aid in hand washing. People are trying to make ventilators, locally manufactured ventilators, But in terms of the disease itself, I've actually must confess that we have very few stories, if any. Let me not say none, because none comes to mind. But I think we've had very few stories about COVID-19 and the triumphs that have come from this. I think we have been focusing on, the challenges and the hardships that people are going through, which is fair because we've seen families that have struggled with COVID-19. We've seen some of the things that have been done that haven't been right, that we have highlighted, and things have had to change. So I think there's space for all of these things, but maybe we need to do a little bit more on stories of hope, but still not forgetting that there are also those people who are facing challenges. And when you are the one facing that challenge, it is 100%. It may not be as much as everyone else, but when you are going through it, it is 100% for you. So I think we need to just strike a balance.
See how to balance it. And actually, it's true. If you even look at even the negative stories about COVID-19, they're not around the disease itself.
No.
They're around everything else. They're around the scandal, the KEMSAs, everything else. But the story of this person went into ICU, or their condition deteriorated and they went into ICU. Even those have not been told. But also, and I remember somebody once told me that one of the strategies that also the Ministry of Health should deploy in communicating the issues of COVID-19 is tell the actual stories of COVID. Not everything else around, but tell the actual stories of COVID. You've seen somebody who has gone through it, has recovered. Tell the stories. Tell the stories of those that are taking care of people in home-based care, or tell the stories of the people who are in home-based care. And the government can also be at the forefront in championing such a cause. What do you think, Dr. Vinji?
Well, I think the positive story of COVID is in the numbers. The first thing I would like to say is that the reason people don't believe there is COVID or say they don't believe, because I hear what you're saying, is because it's not because of COVID itself. It's because of lack of trust in their own government. It has nothing to do with COVID. It has very little to do with it. Most of it has everything to do with the lack of trust in the government, and this lack of trust is not COVID-related lack of trust. It is lack of trust over years of government making promises that doesn't meet. And also people feeling disillusioned about jobs, about this and that, and then the scandals. And over time, people have lost trust in government. So when something like this comes, you had very early people saying the government is doing this so that they get aid from World Bank. Then they're doing this so that they can steal money on PPEs and this kind of thing. That reflects not COVID. It reflects lack of trust. So the first lesson is that the government must embark on a process of earning trust from its citizens, not on COVID generally. And that means getting down to the communities and earning their trust. Now, if we want, as the media, to build the story, a hope story on COVID, then we have to look at the numbers. That 9 out of 10 people who actually get COVID have absolutely no symptoms. I think the challenge you've had is where we tell people that if you get COVID, you'll die. And I think Mercy is trying to allude to that you'll die, this is going to kill you. Then people are looking around them and saying, I'm not seeing anyone dying next to me, but the people next to you have COVID. But you see, we've sold it as if it's a death sentence. So we must go back and say, guys, out of 10 people who get COVID, 9 may not even know it unless they are tested for purposes of public health measures. Only one person may have any symptoms of cough, fever, or difficulty in breathing. And even out of that one, only 0.something% will go to hospital. So generally, we are telling you about COVID so that you protect those who may need to go to hospital. And this is what happens when they go to hospital. But remember, getting COVID is not a death sentence. You will die. You may not even have symptoms. We have to tell people that you have to tell people this number. A lot of the people think that when you get COVID, in fact, that's why parents now are afraid of taking their children to school, because they think my child will get COVID, and when they get COVID, they die. Yet we know that children will get COVID, but they have an innate immunity that protects them. And the fatality rate in children is extremely low. They have only been 3% of our total fatality so far, So we have to sell this story of hope that COVID is a virus, it comes through you. In some people, it will complicate. In majority of people, it will not. That's the story we need to explain to the people.
Bringing the conversation back to the circuit breaker and then the steps that need to be taken because we have a surge in numbers and the circuit breaker. Do I hear you, Dr. Gethenji and Dr. Mercy, saying that then the advice that you would give the government, if you are called in, and I'm sure, Dr. Gethenji, you're part of the Brain Trust, if you are called in by the president on Wednesday and you asked, what should we do? Among the things you'd say is, let's break the circuit, and therefore you're telling us that we should have X number of days of lockdown, cessation of movement?
No, for me, it's not as general as that. My advice would be, there are what we call high-risk sectors. So transmission happens in particular scenarios. So you look at it, you say, fine, we are getting a lot of transmissions, a lot of, what I like to call it the force of transmission. The force of transmission is high. Therefore, you're getting one person infecting many people, and that's why we are seeing so many, kind of this geometric growth of numbers. So you ask yourself, what are those factors that you can actually interrupt to ensure that you reduce the force of transmission? One, you must reduce crowding. I like to call it the 3 C's. You must reduce crowding. You must reduce close contact. And you must reduce closed spaces. And on those 3, I like to add T. You must reduce time spent in any of these 3 C's. Time spent in crowding, time spent in contact, time spent in closed spaces. So if you look at those 3 C's and T's, then you look at different sectors and you map them. It will be very clear which sectors you need to take a step back on. Because there are the sectors where people are actually spending more time in closed spaces, more time crowding, more time contact. So you may say, for example, that we are going to take back social gatherings and say we are actually reducing social gatherings for a month. We are saying we are probably going to ask the bars to have a shorter time and maybe bring back the curfew to 9 p.m. and so that you say then you reduce the amount of time that people are in those closed spaces. You may also want to say that actually if the infection continues, you may want to say no alcohol in those social places. But that could be also for 30 days, and then after that, you circuit break, the cup starts to bend, and then you reopen them again. So you must look at those 3 C's and the T, and then look at the sectors that have the highest risk on that framework, and those are the ones you take back on. It's not a general lockdown for 2 weeks or lockdown for a month. You need to look at the high-risk sectors.
And Dr. Masi, as that happens, then what should the government be doing?
I would want to add to that in that, one, you're looking at the transmission, but also you have to look at the point where you make the diagnosis, you do your surveillance, and you offer care to people who may need that care. And for me, I would look at focusing resources to our facilities. And when you talk about facilities, it's not just, your referral facilities, your level 5 facilities, but devolving all this to even the smaller units at the sub-county level, where people are able to, one, diagnose people who are likely to have COVID-19. 2, they're able to do contact tracing at the sub-county level so that they're able to quarantine and contain at the household levels or at the community levels those people who have been exposed to the virus. And 3, they are able to isolate, even at the sub-county level, even at that small facility, they are able to isolate anyone who has had COVID, and they are able to monitor people who are in isolation at home so that the kind of people who have been infected and who need care, where they need care, whether it's in hospital or it's at home, so that you do these 2 things concurrently. 1, you're stopping super transmission, and 2, you're also taking care of those people who have already been exposed by making sure that, 1, they're in quarantine and others are in isolation. And then now the last thing is to make sure that the places where critical care is available, and I say this because of the challenges we've had, Dr. Grinja has aptly said that we have about 400 ICU beds. You make sure that the places with this capacity, and the capacity is not just the beds, because you're looking at all the equipment that comes with critical care. You're looking at the personnel, and personnel is not just doctors, but also nurses in critical care. You're looking at people who can do dialysis, both nurses and doctors, because all of these things go in hand. You're looking at laboratory capacity to handle ICU care. You make sure that you have adequate isolation for people who will need COVID-19 critical care and those that will need other critical care needs not because of COVID-19, so that you're able to handle that at that point so that you don't have people dying. Because we've seen that people have come out of ICU even after having COVID-19. So it should not be that because you've had COVID, then you will definitely die. We should be able to offer that critical care.
Thank you very much.
The last thing that I would like to say just briefly is that our hospitals also need to be able to triage people who need, because we've seen that other healthcare services have been affected. So our hospitals should be able to triage and be able to test before they admit people, before they take people to surgery, so that they know who has COVID-19 or who doesn't, so that they can appropriately make the right decision, so that they continue offering care to other people. Because when people hear our hospitals are overwhelmed, then they think if I have a stroke, for example, then there's no space.
Then there's
for me
no
in
space for
hospital.
me in the
So
hospital.
we're able to make sure
Yeah.
that other healthcare services continue being offered, even as we do COVID-19 healthcare services.
Dr. Marcy Korir, Group Editor in charge of Health and Sciences at the Standard Group, and Dr. Gethenji Gitahi, Group CEO at Amref Health Africa. Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. And we'd like to just request that you allow us to get back in touch with you after this meeting on Wednesday, but between the President and the Council of Governors, to see the measures that they come up with, and also now to review and see what kind of effect should we expect to see out of that. Asante sana, and we wish you a good day, Dr. Gethenji and Dr. Marcy.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
Have
very
a good
much.
day.
It's also time for us to say thank you very much to our audience on KTN Home. You've been with us since 7 o'clock to now coming up to 5 minutes to 9. Join us again tomorrow morning on KTN Home between 7 and 9. But this conversation continues every morning, every weekday morning on Spice FM. Nairobi 94.4, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu. Nakuru is 96.0, Eldoret is 96.7, Nyeri is 90.9, and Malindi is 97.7. In the next hour, we'll be looking at the cost of treatment of COVID-19 and how this could be addressed. Good morning, KTN.
Spice FM, Malindi.
So, circuit breaker, looking at the various sectors that then could be locked down and looking at where are the transmission points. Do you believe that the government has a pulse on where transmission is happening? Or is it just looking and thinking,
No, they do have a pulse.
bars, close, shut down the bars?
They do have a pulse. They do have a pulse. I think some of the things that, some of the issues that we are now dealing with are things that have arisen from decisions the government made before COVID, and they're now coming back to bite them. If you look at the education sector, had the government ensured that school-going children had the laptops that had been promised, in the numbers that had been promised, this discussion about children being at home and not being able to study would have been a completely different discussion.
Mm-hmm.
If indeed the government ensured that it pushed the county, because it can push the county government to ensure that the level of preparedness, not for COVID, just for any diseases, were up to scratch, we would have had COVID, would have been handling it differently.
Mm-hmm.
If the government itself ensured that the monies that we get, whether we borrow them or whether we raise them, that they were used specifically for the things that they say they were going to do them, and not that 1 trillion Kenya shillings disappears into some amorphous, never-ending deep dark hole, then we would have had COVID, but we would have been handling the disease very differently. So we are in a situation, a lot of it of our own making, through our lovely representation of our lovely leaders. But here we are.
I see a situation, though, where the government may come in with measures to go back to the areas that have seriously been affected before, even despite those industries maybe taking all the necessary steps required. The hospitality sector, for example, could be the first thing. Just because people have been dancing Jerusalem at some certain establishment, then the entire hospitality industry is affected. You're told, shut down the bars, stop selling alcohol at the bars, and that has an impact. How about political rallies? You may hear they actually do not mention anything about banning any politician from conducting any political rally, impromptu or otherwise. Because what happens, for example, when you look at the pictures, it's all impromptu. That's why the politician is in his Land Cruiser, standing out of the sunroof and addressing the people, because the people came out to say hello to their leader.
You know,
stories that we are supposed to believe.
Actually, we've spoken about this, and what we've said is that I don't know how to describe it, because it's hypocritical, it is dangerous, and that's why I brought in the issue of criminalizing these things. How on earth do you keep talking to people about things they should do which you are not doing or leading by example? How?
Indeed.
And you're supposed to be the leaders.
Yeah. Keep it right here. The conversation continues in the next hour. Remember, we have decided that during this time, post-COVID, we are going to work with Google to help you see how best you can then get more visibility for your business online. And this is using all the tools that are available on Google. Many of them are free. We have a Google expert who will be talking to us and who has been joining us every morning. She'll be joining us in the next hour to talk about Google and how you can get your business visible online. Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything I spice it.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So now,
Traffic.
at Pangani, it was looking like there was no traffic earlier, but now it's getting very busy. Kiambu Road, it's getting busy. Mombasa Road is not looking so bad. It's flowing, but at the usual spots near the roundabouts, you'll have a little bit of snarl up. Langata Road coming into town is not so bad until you get to T-Mall, and then you get to the roundabout as people branch off into Bagathi Way and others go towards Slip Road or Nyayo Stadium roundabout. There will be an issue. And no, that's not Slip Road, it's Aerodrome Road. And then there are those on Kiambu Road into town. Exercise patience. You know what's happening. You know that always happens. Avoid any accident or incidents that would then also affect your movement into the CBD or out of the CBD or wherever you want to go this morning. Also, looking at Wayaki Way into town, it's been busy at some point, and then it gets to the roundabout, it gets busier. However, anything that you'd like us to report about, any particular incident, maybe an accident that's causing a snarl up, maybe a tree that's fallen onto the highway, anything that we ought to talk about, let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter, and 40127 is our SMS number.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
The conversation continues right here in The Situation Room this morning. It's Eric Latif and C.T. Muga. Nduwoko is away for a couple of days. As she recuperates, she is getting better. She'll be joining us hopefully later in the week. But let's start the hour with today's proverb.
If the cockroach wants to rule over the chicken, then it must hire the fox as a bodyguard.
If the cockroach wants to rule over the chicken, hire the
then
fox.
it must hire the fox as a bodyguard. But if it doesn't want to rule the chicken, then it can just get on with its life as it normally does and run the risk of being eaten.
But don't trust that thing called a fox. It's too sly. It could play both of them. Play the chicken, play the boss, the cockroach, and still end up eating the chicken.
Well, the safety of the cockroach really is at hand, and foxes are not known to eat cockroaches. No. They prefer to eat things with a little more substance. The cockroach has substance, but it's fairly limited.
That thing is so sly, it'll ensure that there's like a chicken that goes to eat the cockroach so that it becomes the boss. Trust the fox at your own peril. Make sure you do not trust a fox. So let's talk about business and how you then go online. We've been having conversations with the Google expert. She is the SME lead for East Africa, Rosemary Momanyi-Opio. She'll be joining us shortly. Business and what the tools that she's taken us through so far, CT. Businesses, even before COVID-19, I mean, this is not like these are tools that were developed by Google in the period of COVID-19, but even before, businesses needed to go online.
Well, businesses needed to actually be known because you can't conduct business with people if they have no idea what on earth you are doing. All right? But it has come at a good time when this connectivity through the internet and through social media became possible. And Google, being one of the giants in that particular field, understood, I think, the import of it. So it then became possible, instead of thinking of the traditional ways of getting known, they made it possible. They came up with a tool that made it possible for people to actually get to know, not just about you, but about the business, your location, what it is you do, when and how, and the details of it. And it was made easier, meaning you can actually arrive at this information in a manner that is not a teeth-pulling exercise.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we've seen development of that. So many people, when they think about going online, they think you need to be a big organization, or two, an organization that then has a payment platform that's also online. That if I sell shoes and I have the physical shoes with me somewhere in one of the rooms in my house, and I want to go online, then I cannot go online because I don't have a payment platform where someone can go and see the shoe they like, click and turn the shoe around, choose the size, choose the color, and then pay online and check out, and then the shoe will be delivered to them. But that is one, and there are many businesses that are operating like that, and they are advancing. And then those others that you go online, and as you develop, as people get to know more about you, as you also get to understand the needs of your clients, then you shall get there.
Yes.
But you can advertise yourself. You can say, this is where my location is, or this is how you can find the shoes, or this is how you can contact me. And just someone comes, searches for a pair of shoes, they see your business, they see they can contact you, they call you, then from there you complete the transaction offline. And very many people are doing that now.
You know what is even of interest is this, huh? It's not as though people who come to you may necessarily be online, but because a number of people know it, word of mouth then also comes into play. Somebody who has contact, you will tell someone, I actually do know such and such and such a person who is located here, and this is what they do. So prospective clients who might otherwise have actually given you business are now put in a position where not only do they know about you, but they have details about what it is you do and how you do it and where you do it. Yes.
And there's also something about, now that you talk about that as well, there's the issue of being rated, and this is customer feedback and satisfaction.
Yes.
There's a very simple satisfaction survey now called a star rating. When you use any of the cab hailing services like Uber and the others, at the end of the trip, they ask you, rate the driver.
Yes,
It's basically what you're saying, how did you find the service offered by the driver? How did you find the personality of this driver? Same thing happens with business. Someone has used your service, then they're asked to judge you and rate you and say, I liked the fact that they respond very quickly. I like the fact that they are very sociable. I like the fact that they deliver on time. I like the fact that what they're selling is what they actually deliver. And that goes a long way in also adding to your profile. People now start believing you because you can see that other people have liked your service. That's how these online tourism platforms have been able to thrive as well.
Yes, they have. But even if you look at some of the big names in that line of business, many of them have thrived simply because they then afford you an opportunity that ordinarily would require physical travel for you to be able to contact them. And now you don't have to do that. And when it advances, it also doesn't require you to physically collect what it is that you desire to purchase.
Yep.
It can actually arrive at you. So again, I think the future is with us here.
It is. So it's upon us to take advantage of it.
Yes.
Let's bring in the expert, Rosemary Momanyo-Pio, Google SME lead for East Africa. Good morning, Rosemary.
Good morning, Eric. How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you. How was your weekend?
It was good. Thank you for playing my song on Friday. I truly enjoyed it. I'm really grateful.
Lovely. Lovely. So what do you want to teach us about this week? Let's start with today.
Today we'll do a deep dive into Google My Business, really highlighting 3 reasons why it's important for any business who resides in Kenya should be online. So I'll take you through the 3 most important elements about it, and then how to sign up for it.
So what is Google My Business anyway?
So Google My Business is a wonderful tool that enables an SME to create an online presence for themselves, to put their business online, as simple as it is. If you have a business and it's not online, the best and easiest way to do so is to create a business profile that gives you instant visibility and enables you to be found by customers who are looking for you.
All right, so take us through some of the attributes of Google My Business.
Yeah, so sure. So the first one is really, it helps you show up first on 2 platforms. First, you're able to show up on Google Search. And then number 2, you're able to show up on Google Maps. if you have a physical presence. So the first one really right now is to highlight the fact that for businesses who have a business profile, they're 29% more likely to attract purchases. Those are that's a simple fact.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're 38% more likely to get visits to their physical presence if they have one. And so it's very important for any business to remember that because of those two reasons and those two data facts, they should have a business profile. So just as you can see on that slide here, if you're to search for buy food near me, what shows up in that case was Jumia and a Stable House restaurant. That's near where I live. And you can see those three companies right now have business profiles, and they showed up. And therefore, I was able to select from the three of them which one to go to.
Okay.
So moving on, let me pause there. Any questions on that? That's the simple of it. It's a simple business profile that helps you show up on search and maps. And that's an example of three companies who have business profiles. When I searched for buy food near me, and you saw them showing up.
And so this is just like, do you need to create a page? Do you need to create a website so that this is then called Google My Business? Or what is it?
Yes. So it's two things. So one, it's a business profile. It's like a simple page that shows up that highlights your website and your physical location on Google search. And then if you don't have a website, we're able to go one step deeper and create for you a one-pager website called a business site.
Okay.
So what happens is we find that every single month, there are over 100 billion website visits across the globe, and over 1 billion phone calls to those businesses requesting whether it's a phone call to request a support or service. And then there are over 3 billion requests for directions on Google Maps. So with those types of statistics globally, it's imperative that if you're a business owner, that you have to be online. That way you can be able to be part of that ecosystem and get found by people looking for you.
Okay.
So I want to take you through now just 3 reasons why it's very important to have a business profile. Number one, it helps you stand out. Number two, you're able to engage with your customers. And number three, you're able to get insights. So I'll take you through each of those 3 elements one by one.
Okay.
So let's begin with how you're able to stand out, right? So by being able to have a business profile on Google Search and Maps, you're able to incorporate things like your physical address, if you have a physical presence. You can input there your phone number. If you have a website, you can link to your website to the business profile. What's very important is your opening hours. So indicate there what days of the week that you're open and what hours you're open as well. And then by having that information available to any person looking for you, you are able then to stand out and have a presence that enables you to be found by customers.
If my business is only an online business, so I don't have a physical location, that means I cannot really put in the map location and or directions as well. So I only have my business is online. I operate it from my bedroom, but I have these goods or services that I am able to supply, but I have my phone number. Would I still be able to get onto Google My Business?
Absolutely. So what we do is, in that case, if you don't have a physical location, what we do is we ask you to give us your service area. So do you cover Westlands? Do you cover Parklands? Do you cover the whole of Nairobi? Do you cover nationally in Kenya? So you indicate to us your service area, and then we'll map that as your service area on the business profile.
I see.
Yes, so it works well just for those who have an online business. Just indicate your service area, and we'll map that out onto the Google Maps interface. And I said for those who don't have a website, we offer them a simple business site that can be put together in less than 10 minutes, Eric, and see that. So it's very simple. You create your business site, you put in your contact details, you add your photos, you hit publish, and in 10 minutes you have your business site. And that's really powerful for somebody who wants a website but can't afford one. But we're offering them a simple one page that offers them the same options as you would a simple website. So they're able then to stand out with the website and the business profile.
How much does it cost?
It's free. There is no cost to this. There is absolutely no cost to this. I mean, it's free as can be.
So with this, then I will be able to create a website and have the same URL for my business. Let's say it's Eric Latif Sales, and I'll be able to have my URL, ericlatifsales.com.
So in this case, with the business site, the URL will be ericlatif.business.site. So that's the only difference now, because we're offering them a complimentary page.
Okay.
It's linked to business.site. But when you're ready now to expand and grow, Eric, as you would have over the next few months, we can then upgrade you to a .co.ke, and then you can have your full URL as you'd like it. But for right now, it will be ericlatif.business.site, which is still functionable and can still enable you to be found by customers looking for you.
With the communication you have with the clients and even prospective clients, have you encountered what it is that many people tell you to be a hindrance to accessing these the clear benefits of this product?
For me, the biggest one is they just don't know it exists. That's our biggest challenge. There's very little awareness of the products, and for those who know, think it's there's a cost. The cost barrier. So my biggest goal right now is to try and create as much awareness as possible that it's available to any SME in Kenya, and then there is no cost to it. So the biggest barrier has always been lack of knowledge or no awareness, or the fear that it's going to cost them money to get the business profile.
When you say there's no cost, for instance, if they are going to access internet, there'll be a cost for the internet, correct?
Of course. To use the data bundles, absolutely. But then to get the product, to have the business profile and the business side, there is no cost for buying or for getting them.
The only cost is your connectivity. But
Correct.
beyond that, everything else is?
Free.
Free.
At no cost.
In capital letters?
Yes. In capital letters, exclamation mark. Yes.
Underlined in red?
And bolded. Yes.
Free ya kanisa, si free ile ya conman.
Yes.
Exactly.
Actual free.
Actual free.
How
and then
then-
the next point is about engaging.
Right.
So for me, I think it's very powerful as an SME to be able to hear feedback about your products and your services and be able to respond almost in near real time. So this tool, you're able then to ask customers to give you reviews, give you feedback. Then you can now know where can I improve, what's working really well, what do I need to change and modify. So you're able then to get these reviews and, of course, hopefully use them to build and to grow yourself. So there's a very powerful element here about allowing you to engage and get feedback from your customers on how best to improve yourself. Okay.
So, and how do they do that?
Yes. So the product allows them to be able to request for reviews, right? So you're able then to say, fine, I have my page, it's eric.latif.business.site. I'm unable to now ask CT to come and give me feedback on how he felt my products and services were. And then CT will then go in, put in his feedback, his reviews, give you 5 stars, hopefully, and then you're able then to now see what he feels about your product. So it's a way for you to be able to send out feedback forms to your customers and have them input to you what they feel about your products or your services. And then you'll now know how they feel about you.
But you know the way people
Number
are.
two-
If someone went in there and posted a very negative comment, just because, people and haters, can I delete it?
Yes, you can. You have the option to do that. You definitely, yes. And the other way to engage also on that, Eric, is to be able to post. You can make posts that you can then put out there and say, hey, we're offering some special this week, 50% off for the first 5 customers who buy the products today over the next 1 week. So you're able then to make this post out on social media that announce your campaigns or any news or what the opening hours are changing. So you're able then to put out messages out there about your products and your services from the platform as well. So it's very powerful to help you deliver that kind of messages as well to your customers.
Okay.
And then the third and final thing is all about getting insights. So you'll be able to understand how do people find you. Were they searching and then they found you by typing in eric.latif, or were they looking at this broad category of this product and then you popped up? Did they come to you through search or through Google Maps? On what day of the week did they come to you? On what time? So you're able then to then use this platform to be able to help you decide when are my popular hours? Where do my clients come from? What are the referral websites? So you're able to then mine this analytics and be able to say, fine, my business days are Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. My days are Monday and Tuesday. Let me just do campaigns because I want to get more people coming in on those non-busy days. So you're able then to use that to inspire how to customize yourself to be more relevant to your users who look for you. So it's offering to stand out, to engage, and then, of course, to get for yourself insights.
All right. And how do I then get online? Or how do I get onto this Google My Business?
Yes. So we have a partner who is based in Kenya who supports SMEs across the continent. They're called Africa 118. So if you would like to get your business profile, all you need to do is type in google.africa118 spiceFM.co.ke, and you'll be able to either do two things: call them directly from the website. You have a phone number there, or input a phone number that we can call you back within 24 hours for us to help you on board onto the platform. And it's very simple how it works. You make a request for them to call you. They'll call you back. They'll walk you through the queries that will require your phone number, business name, etc. And then within a few days, 24 hours to be precise, you'll be able to get your profile up and running. And if you want a one-pager website, it's available to you as well within 24 hours. So it's super fast, super easy. And again, it's google.africa118.co.ke to engage.
Now, when you call them, what hours are they available?
Yes, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
So you call, and then there'll be somebody on the other end, and they pick your call and they take you through how to get your business online.
Correct.
Are there any forms that you fill out, confidentiality and the rest?
So at the end of the day, again, this is all public information and it's all your data. So at the end of the day, you will own the profile. And once you're able to get ownership of your profile, you can then go and make your own updates, edits as you require. But ultimately, you as a business owner own that information. It's yours, and you can then decide to make updates in the future or put it up when you're ready to come down. But it's really your data as an SME in Kenya.
Let me just ask, people living with disabilities, people who don't have sight or their hearing is impaired, how would this particular program benefit them?
Okay, so if hearing is impaired, they could definitely do an email and request support in that manner, and we can be able to help them just input it through writing or through typing and be able to create their profile through that type of support. So there's an option to then have us email you back as opposed to us calling you back, if that would be a challenge to you.
Do I need a Gmail account or a Google account to be able to go online or with Google My Business?
Yes. So once we have been able to create for you your business profile, we then invite you to then take ownership of that account. And for that to happen, we require you to send us a Gmail email address for us to send you an email for you then to be able to receive and take ownership of your profile. So yes, you will require a Gmail or a Google-enabled account to be able to receive and take ownership of your business profile.
And after that, you leave me alone. Is there any
You're
follow-up
done.
support?
Nothing.
No follow-up support
If you have any-
we noticed that since we created this account for you, you even haven't put on a profile photo or you haven't edited one or two things. Is there any such kind of support to make sure that then I'm able to utilize Google My Business the way it was intended to be utilized?
Yes. So what we do is once we give you the ownership of your account, we take you through training on how then to, one, add photos, how to make updates, how to be able to change your phone numbers if required or email addresses. So we walk you through how to be able to maintain the product. And if you have any questions, you call us or you email us and we'll be able to respond to you as required.
Rosemary, this sounds very exciting. We'd like to talk to somebody who has actually gone through this process.
Exactly. Yes.
So,
go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. Who is this and when can we talk to them?
Oh, her name is Wangare. She's the founder of a company called New Start Organics. So what we plan to do is have her on the show this week, ask her about her experience, how she used the profile, and then at the end of the day, we'll learn from her and her experiences as well. So hopefully this week we get to talk to Wangare and ask her about her experience on using the platform.
All right. So your daughter also wants to join Google My Business. So we'll let you just...
You can see.
We'll let you sign her on.
Yeah, she was right here.
Right.
It's called distance learning.
It's called working from home.
Working from home.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. Rosemary is the expert. She is the SME lead for East Africa at Google. Rosemary Momanyi-Apio. She's been taking us through how to get your business online. Remember, all these interviews that we have every morning with Rosemary, we are able also to cut them up and we upload them on YouTube. If you just go to our YouTube channel, this is Spice FM KE. That's Spice FM KE. That's our YouTube channel. You'll find all these interviews, what we discussed with Rosemary last week, and what we'll be discussing with Rosemary today and in days to come. Asante sana, Rosemary, and have a great day and attend to your student.
Thank you. Thanks.
Asante sana. So just keep it right here because we'll be having more and more conversations with Rosemary every weekday morning from 9 a.m. And we'd like you to try it out. Just go to google.africa118.co.ke. You'll find telephone numbers there. You'll find how you can contact them. Please call them up. Ask them how you can get your business online. And once you do that, let us know how the process has been for you. Spice FM KE on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or 40127 is our number. Or also you can call us 0719-012-600. Let's take a break. Let's take a look at the weather. And then we have another conversation about COVID-19. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
All right, it's mostly cloudy in Ireland and the United Kingdom, so we expect temperatures to rise to 18 degrees later in the day and then drop to as low as 8. In Paris, we expect it to rise to 19 from the current 17, cloudy day, and then 9 later in the evening. Beijing, China is a cold day. It's going to be 13 degrees. It will be sunny, but then later at night, it will drop to 1 degree. Kinshasa, 22 presently, mostly cloudy day, going to 30 and then dropping to 22. New York is currently at 7 degrees Celsius. It'll rise to 8 degrees and then drop back to 5. Have an even temperature throughout the day and night in New York. In Lagos, Nigeria, it's currently at 25. Light rains expected in the day, jumping to 31 and coming down to 24. Johannesburg, South Africa, currently at 15, mostly sunny, rising to 21 and then dropping again to 12. Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, light rains at 25 degrees, jumping to 28 and then dropping to 24 later at night. Kampala, Uganda, is currently at 21, light rains, expected to rise to 26 and then dropping to 17. In Kisumu, currently at 21, mostly cloudy day, 29 is a high, 19 is a low. Kakamega, currently at 21, also mostly cloudy, highs of 28 and lows of 15. Mombasa, 26 degrees, mostly sunny, highs of 30 and lows of 25. Eldoret, 17, currently mostly cloudy day at 23 and then dropping to 13. Nyeri, 17 is the current temperature. Light rains expected throughout the day at 22 degrees is high, 14 is low. Nakuru at 23 highs and 15 lows, but presently at 18. Expect mostly cloudy days. In Nairobi, light rains in some parts of Nairobi today, highs of 24 and lows of 17.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
719-012-600, SMS 40127, or Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter. Your experience dealing with COVID-19. Either you know somebody who has had COVID-19, you know somebody who's been through home-based care, and maybe you're one of the caregivers of this person, or you went through COVID-19 and your experiences in home-based care or in hospital. Because what is emerging is the cost of treating COVID-19, and these costs are pretty high. We're talking about people in home-based care, asymptomatic patients. According to this study conducted by researchers at KEMRI, who included also Chief Administrative Secretary at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Massimo Wangangi, Edwin Barasa, Angela Cairo, Wangari Nganga, Mary Beth Maritim, Vincent Were, and Samuel Akech, the cost is not something that you just, sort like a fly. It's quite high cost. People under home-based care. So you've tested positive for COVID-19. You're going through treatment at home. How much does it cost you? 18,000 shillings, 856 for PPEs. Staffing, 2,243. Health workers who would be coming to visit you, their transport, 1,000 bob. COVID-19 test itself is 1,816, and this is public facilities. Total cost per day, 1,993 cost per day, and then rising to 23,916 through the period of your treatment. Those who need to go are taken into isolation. Their cost goes to 89,000 shillings. Those who are in home-based care, but they are moderate, they have moderate symptoms, their cost rises to 23,942. Those in isolation with moderate symptoms, 89,009 bob. So we are not even going to those who are then taken to hospital and they're in severe or in critical, because those in hospital with severe symptoms, it comes to 150 Gs. Those in who are taken to ICU, it comes to 712,000 shillings. These are not low figures, CT.
No, they're not low figures. And when you look at these figures, it then lends itself to the understanding of why it's actually absolutely important to actually prevent or to avoid a situation that would actually get you infected. Because quite aside from the process and the time and the cost of treatment, the simple way is ensuring you don't get it. So that if it does then arrive at you, it is something that everything that you could do from your perspective was done, but it's just one of those things that then happens.
Yeah.
But then when you find a situation where people are being exposed to COVID in the most blatant way possible, when you look at the nonchalant way in which our politicians, the cavalier way in which they just go about their business as though everything is hunky-dory and there's no COVID in the country, that cannot be tolerated because it is wrong.
It raises questions.
It is wrong.
It raises questions because then you're saying that you're subjecting somebody to go get COVID, and if they end up in hospital, they require 150,000 shillings.
Yes, yes. And what I'm saying is we're seeing it being perpetrated by people who are in leadership, who always tell us how it is their keen and fundamental interest is in the common man. And this is the common man who is being endangered. So how on earth do you marry the two? You say one thing, and what we see you doing is the complete opposite. Because in that crowd, there'll be people who are asymptomatic.
Yep.
And given the proximity of crowds, the likelihood of infection is probably at its very highest. The frenzy of such meetings, they throw caution to the winds. They don't wear PPE. They don't wear face masks. There's touching, there's shoving, there's breathing in people's faces, there's sneezing in people's faces. You think about it, any possible way of contracting or passing on COVID because of close proximity is provided for when people are in a crowd. And then there's this issue of the cost, which at the end of the day has been the biggest burden. Even before COVID, we were talking about unemployment. We were talking about situations that people can't afford just to live from day to day. Now, you want to throw this burden and add another burden onto them, is the cost of being looked after. And I'm reading this report, and I do not see which part of this the government is saying or is indicated as what the government will take care of, except for providing the hospital itself.
Yeah. There's a hospital, so you find yourself there and come and pay for the services.
That is what seems to be the case.
And these costs are pretty high. I mean, how then do you, even as a government, go about your business knowing that many people, how many people are in home-based care right now in the country? 4,808 patients under home-based care. All right? If we look at those that are in home-based care and are asymptomatic, if you just think about the people who are taking care of you, if we told them just to wear PPE so that they can serve you, so that they can come into close contact with you, they require PPEs. If you told them that just because we know that you're in this room and you are COVID-19, you're asymptomatic, yes, but this is how much it's going to cost us to take care of you.
Yes. And one of the reasons why the PPE is by far the most expensive item, if you're looking at the cost of treatment, is because of the PPEs that we have. Single use.
Use once, discard.
Yes, you can use it in the course of the day, but it's once. And these aren't patients who are in hospital for a day.
Yep.
So you have a situation where before you touch on any other expenses, just the PPE alone, 10,000.
Yep.
If you're there for 3 days, that's 30,000 before you've done anything else.
You know, when I think about it, this first column of home-based care, asymptomatic, Is it a reality that people are actually wearing PPEs? Who's bringing you the PPEs?
Well, they bring in them, then you have to pay for them.
And this healthcare workers transport, that there's a medical officer who will come and see you and you'll pay them 1,000 shillings for their transport as reimbursement. Who's doing this? Is it actually happening? The one of isolation, I can imagine. Because isolation, we know, and we've heard from various county governments as well and other experts, that the people who are taken into isolation are those that are whose condition is evaluated and they're seeing your living conditions will not work well for home-based care because you don't have a room that you can be isolated. So you're taken to an isolation facility that is being run by the government. The cost of that is this 89,000 shillings.
Yes.
Who is paying these 89,000 shillings? It is the person who's expected to fork out the 89,000 shillings in a government facility. This is ridiculous.
It is.
It's ridiculous. Because you're saying that because I've come here, I'm completely asymptomatic, but you've taken me, let's say, to an isolation facility like the one that the Nairobi Metropolitan Service is going to come up with, facility at the Mbagathi Hospital, 150-bed facility. If you just taken in there, just know that it's going to be a cost. And you're going to come out and fork out the money, 189,000 shillings, yet you are asymptomatic, but only because of your living conditions at home that you could not be considered to undergo home-based care so that you don't infect the others. This is a very high, very, very high cost. So we want to get your experience on this, on what's happening with COVID-19 in the community, those in home-based care. How much is it costing, even in terms of, just emotional support, physical support, the monetary support? Those that are then taken into isolation, they are asymptomatic, but they're taken into an isolation center. What is the cost of that? Those that are going into isolation facilities or seeking medical care in hospitals, what is the cost of that? Let's go to the phone lines in Mwakijembe, our friend Mohammed. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Wangwana, salamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, kaka. Hujambo?
Mimi nashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu niko salama, natumai na nyinyi pia ni vile vile.
Tuko salama pia, tunashukuru.
Mimi ningeomba kuruhusiwa kama itakubalika niregelee mchangio wangu wa kawaida wa ukwaju. Kama itaruhusiwa niendelee, kama haitoruhusiwa basi mtanisamehe.
Inaruhusiwa na tunakuomba uendelee.
Nashukuru sana, ubarikiwe mzee mwalimu. Nitaanza kuuliza mwalimu, uweza kuadmit mtoto kwa secondary school bila kupitia primary?
Ni ngumu sana bwana, haiwezekani kwa ufupi.
Asante sana kujibu hapo. Sasa mimi nashangaa kila hivi leo wataalamu wawili mkadeta wakazungumza, waliobobea katika mambo ya afya na nini. Na kunishangaza wao ni secondary tu wanataka, lakini primary hawapagusi kabisa. Kujenga hii kinga ya mwili, immune system. Last time nilichangia hata nikasema sababu ya vaccine nini, kufight back the pathogen ambayo inaleta ule ugonjwa. Na mara nyingi viral infection haina tiba. Hiyo mwajua na wataalamu wanajua. Mara nyingi, sisemi mara zote, mara nyingi huwa haina tiba. Tiba iliyoko ni kinga ya mwili. Aidha kinga imejijenga yenyewe au chanjo ya kuamsha hiyo kinga ipigane na viini vinavyosababisha ugonjwa huo. Hapo nadhani tutakubaliana mpaka hapo.
Yes. Hapo tutakubaliana.
Lakini sasa utaona kuwa hizi asilimia kubwa wanaotoka positive wako asymptomatic. Sababu kinga yao iko sawa, inapigana vita na vile viini vya kusababisha ugonjwa huu. Na ukiangalia wale wanyonge kama kina sisi tunaokula mchunga na mnavu, saa yote tuko juani, tunasota, exercise, ile wa walk, wabeba, uko kwenye mjengo, au kwenye gym, au uko kwenye shughuli yoyote ya kuchangamsha mwili, hata kazi za nyumbani za kufua na kuosha vyombo, vyote hivi ni exercise kwa mwili. Halafu upate na jua, upate vitamin D. Hiyo pia inachangia kujenga kinga. Halafu hivi vyakula vya kirahisi, unajua mabonyenye upenda kuna mapochopocho ya junk food, kina pizza, kina burger, sijui kina nini. Hiyo yote haifai. Najua halimpati, iko ndani ya gari, akienda ofisini ndani ya gari, akija nyumbani iko chini ya kivuli, all across, jua halimpati.
Vitamin D
utafikiri ni albino. Na vitamin D hapati. Kunywa ukwaju hataki. Kula mchunga na mnavu hataki. Sasa utakuta ukifanya utafiti utakuta wengi walioathirika ikawasumbua sana ni wale watu ambao mabwenyenye. Lakini wakinanyangarika kama kina sisi si rahisi, manake Mungu ametupa hizi mbinu za kirahisi kujenga kinga yetu ya mwili. Sasa kama hasa wataalamu wamezungumza, sijasikia hata mmoja akichangia kuhusu kinga ya mwili. Na vipi sisi wa Kenya au ulimwengu mzima tufanye bidii kujenga kinga ya mwili kitambo ya kungoja hiyo chanjo. Na huku tunatekeleza mambo ya secondary. Kuvaa maborohoa, kuvaa social distance, kusanitize. Hiyo yote tutafanya, lakini chanzo au muhimu ni kujenga kinga ya mwili. Hiyo ikipatikana, mengine itakuwa kazi rahisi. Kwa hivyo kwa nini hata huyu Daktari Korir na mchallenge aje aongee sahihi kama hayo naongea hayana ukweli? Au mtaalamu yoyote, you cannot sanitize the whole world, my friend. You cannot. Na hiyo social distance hata kilomita 10, wewe ikiwa itakushika baba. Kwa hivyo nyinyi media pia mwachangia hii mada ya kujenga kinga. Naona pia hamuipendi kusikiza unless kuna hidden agenda pale.
It's a primary issue. It's a primary issue. Kweli kabisa hapo Mohamed, and thank you very much for your contribution.
Lakini why don't you people emphasize on this primary issue? You as media.
Pia tumechukua sasa hiyo challenge.
Hiyo challenge kila siku mimi na repeat, tunafanya revision. Anyway, mimi nawatakia siku njema. Nataka
Mohamed, even before you came in, we had been saying that the thing we need to focus on is to ensure people don't get infected. What we didn't say is that they should build the immune system, and in that you are absolutely correct.
Thank you, sir. I wish you a good day and a very blessed one.
Asante sana pia wewe. It's 20 minutes to 10 o'clock. We want to take your calls, 0719-012-600. Your experience with COVID-19, taking care of somebody who is with COVID-19, home-based care, or knowing that somebody has gone through COVID-19 either in isolation facility or in hospital, in going through severe symptoms or even going into ICU, especially when it comes to cost. How is this being handled? Good morning. Let's take a look at traffic.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
It has been a tough year for your business, hasn't it? But you hung in there. You pressed on. You persevered. And now it's time to rise up. It's time to get ready, to get going, to get selling. And Google is here to help you rise up. Get free training and tools to help your businesses adapt and grow online. Visit g.co/Grow Africa to start now.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
Right,
You're listening to
the peak traffic session is coming to an end, so traffic is now beginning to flow a bit better on Kiambu Road, on Thika Road into town, on Langata Road into town, on Gong Road as well into town, and Wayaki Way coming into town, Jogoo Road into town, and Mombasa Road into town. Things are beginning to look up. Now, the part that I'm saying that there is a slight build-up is Mombasa Road, out of town, especially right here around the Standard Group Center going towards General Motors. Whatever is happening is just called upon you to exercise a bit of patience and caution and be a good driver on the road. But if there's anything that you think we should alert people about, 40127 is the SMS number, and Spice FM KE is our Twitter handle. Good morning.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right. 0719-012-600 and Spice FM KE on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. That's why we're taking your comments.
You know what I sometimes wonder is why is it that we reject the simple and easy solutions to problems?
Like this one?
Yes. wash your hands, do this, avoid this. It's not really complicated. But there is a complication in all this because some of the advice goes against what you'd actually prefer to do, what you'd like, what you're used to. And so you throw in conformity and the resistance that we have towards change. And then a situation that, if you look at it on the face of it, is simple, but now it gets complicated. Because if you're talking about immune boosters, and Mohammed is right, there are very many ways of actually boosting your immune system through foods, and nothing out of the ordinary. Things that ordinarily you come across and things that ordinarily almost anyone can actually eat. Just
Locally available.
Locally available, even in the simplest of homes. Because I know medical science has immune boosters for people who are a certain age and who by virtue of their age, the immune system has been compromised. The booster is an injection which has the properties that will guarantee that your immune system is given that upward boost that it requires. But foods do an excellent job of it. And these foods are known. What you cook with, what you eat, they are known. What you drink. Mohammed keeps talking about mkwaju. Tamarind. Ukwaju, sorry. I'm thinking of a walking stick. A tamarind. And he is not wrong. Scientifically, it's been proven to be an immune booster. But the list of these things which are available locally are endless. Now, so as not to challenge medical science, but to perhaps assist it. Indeed, even if it wasn't for immune boosting, we all know that one of the ways of staying healthy is by eating. Just eating.
Yeah.
So now it's just a question of eating, but looking for foods whose purpose, apart from just being foods that help you, but it also boosts your immunity. Now this is something that people can focus on.
And it's actually stuff that is readily and easily available to the many people.
Yes, and it plays that job. The purpose is the preventative aspect of COVID. It helps you avoid a situation where COVID may be a problem to you, either through infection or it may affect you adversely.
And Mohammed is also right in terms of even the messaging. How much messaging are we getting from the experts, even from the Ministry of Health on a daily basis as they release the numbers? Imagine if you just went to the rider, boost your immunity.
Yes.
Do this and the other. In Tanzania, they went through that and they said, you know what, from the government level, they were talking about now using those traditional ways of boosting your immunity, of clearing your blocked nose and system.
Yes.
And respiratory system.
Yes.
Conversation that tells you, you know what, guys, we have the solutions. So don't think about cost. Just think about it's available. It's readily available. You can get it locally. Just go ahead and do it.
You know, there are those who argue that when you bring into being a discussion on the preventative aspects, people then assume that you're talking about a cure. You are not. You are talking about how it is you can arm your body to deal with the disease should it come your way. It's not that it won't get you. No, if and when it does. This is how. Because when someone is inoculated, what happens? Your body develops what you may call as the armed forces within your system that can fight off. That's what it does. It readies the body to fight off the disease should it come your way. In the absence of that, it comes your way, it hits you and you're bedridden and you're not doing well at all. But with it, even if it comes your way, when it comes your way, you're ready for it. But you're right. Our messaging, our focus on the preventative aspects of COVID have not been as vast as they should be. They
not
haven't
as
been.
good.
No, they haven't been.
As we gear towards the meeting between the President and the Council of Governors, and people even fearing that what is going to be announced there is another lockdown. Call it whatever, call it a circuit breaker. It's basically another disruption. Cessation of movement and telling you do not go, even if they said, let's close down the bars. Just listening to the President yesterday when he was at the All Saints Cathedral, and what he was saying is, if we do not adhere to these protocols and the measures, then the government has no option but to come back and review some of those measures that had been taken initially. And this is cessation of movement, reducing the gatherings and all.
Let's start with the reduction of these rallies that politicians keep having, including him, the president.
That is the number one thing. I think they should lead by example. Before you tell us anything else,
Who's going to listen to you if you do not lead by example?
start from that point.
Yes.
Start by saying from this point on, there shall be no more public meetings. It
That's
doesn't
it.
matter. You don't tell us that it has been organized. That
And I was passing through. Forget the passing. Don't pass through.
Don't.
All these people can afford to go by helicopter if they have to go to a meeting. Go by helicopter. Why must you pass through towns when people know you're passing by and you then have to stop? Better still, stop. Remember, we had this discussion, and my suggestion was simply stop.
Stop everything.
Halt.
All the rallies.
Yes.
We have just launched BBI, though.
So?
And BBI requires that people then get to meet so they can discuss it. There'll be campaigns that will be conducted to conduct civic education, because that's what these campaigns are. It's civic education.
There's something about meeting in small groups, okay? It can be managed. We've seen it being done in churches. It can be managed in religious gatherings. We've seen it done in funerals, weddings. It can be done. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about these mass movement rallies. So long as we have them, it doesn't matter what you say about what people should do. They won't do it.
They will not do it.
Because you are leading, the example you're leading by is what's being followed. The quiet message that isn't spoken of, but look, if we are gathering in this crowd, it can't be as bad as they're saying. Okay? And then all the other negative narratives about COVID come into play, or what the government is thinking, what they're hoping they'll achieve, and they're not positive. So, if the leaders can't understand this simple example, this simple, terrible, horrible, bad example that they set by having these rallies, then all this messaging of theirs, as I said earlier on, start by keeping quiet. Stop talking to us about it, because you're wasting your energy and wasting our time in listening to you.
So are you saying, because you can say that ban the huge public
Stop.
gatherings and rallies.
Stop.
But then people can still meet, for example, in, we can meet in the grounds of State House, you can meet in the grounds of the DP's residence in
But
Karen.
those are managed.
And it's a big tent.
It's managed. You can see it is managed. All the precautionary measures can be put in place. They can be managed. But so long as you're talking, it doesn't matter. Human beings, and this is not me and my opinion, it's been scientifically proven more times than I can count or figure. Our method of learning is usually best through observation, not what we hear, it's what we see. You say one thing and you do one thing. Well, what you do is what will be taken as the message. And if you throw in the theories and if you throw in the myths that have surrounded COVID, the leaders are making those myths real. They're arming those myths. They're giving them feet. They're giving them wings.
Yeah.
They're giving them staying power. So it doesn't matter what else the Ministry of Health says. They listen, but they know what they saw. And they know this thing can't be a problem. Because you're this mass rally and people wanted dropping down like flies. The last time people died in a mass rally was when they were killed. That's what they will tell you. So they are helping spread COVID in the communities and in the largest numbers possible, because these people who attend rallies, these crowds also travel. They will go to places. They will board matatus. They will visit. So the government is cancelling any effort that their Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Education is trying to put in place by these by these thoughtless political activities that they keep having, because it is thoughtless. You can't talk to us about the safety of your citizenry when your action directly puts them in danger. What are you saying?
It's the messaging.
And when you message, we look at what you do. That is the strongest message.
Why not just go back to that point and say, reduce the number of meetings that exceed X number of people?
But that's the whole point.
Because in that case, in that way, if you even come back to below 100, then you can say that this is well managed, this then is well organized.
And Eric, is it something that cannot be done? Of course it can be done. We've been seeing it. We've seen it done. It has been done. So why are they not doing it? Why are they taking us back to that danger zone, which we have been trying to avoid?
And the social distance. So until and unless, what I hear you say is until and unless the government, I'm looking for a photo that I saw earlier, until and unless the government leads by example by stopping these meetings, until and unless the government leads by example by doing practicing what it's preaching, they should not talk to us.
Are they telling us that this whole, let's talk about the BBI, a wonderful thing, a way forward, brings about discussions, those opposing it help the discussion even further, discussions that we need to have and we've needed to have for the longest time in this country. So, you are saying it's going to better the lives of, and in so doing, you're causing the death of others. So what are you saying? What are you saying?
We're saying nothing.
Yes.
We are saying, this is the photo I was looking for. I was looking at this picture, which was taken yesterday at the Friends Church Kabete in Nairobi. And the front row seats that had been reserved for the dignitaries that attended this church service, it's on page 4 of the Daily Nation. Ruaraka MP TJ Kajwang, Makadara MP George Aladwa, Westlands Tim Wanyonyi, nominated MP Maina Commander and Nairobi Woman Rep Esther Passaris, together with the Mathare MP Anthony Oluoch. They were at a church service yesterday. I'm looking at the distancing between
the seating
seats.
arrangement.
Yes. And clearly, the message here is different. Even if you talk about this is a very well managed meeting because there are limited number of people who could attend the church service.
You know, in a time, in the not too distant past, we used to have pictures such as this, and the chairs were clearly distant.
Yep.
You could see.
You could see the one.
The space. But we've forgotten. Now, surely, if our own leaders haven't internalized the need to actually make this thing a priority and to take it seriously, because the message they're sending is that they don't take it seriously. And then you are telling the citizenry, take this thing that we're telling you seriously. On which planet is this going to happen? Because on Earth, it's certainly not going to happen.
It's not happening
No,
on
it's not
Earth.
going to happen.
Nothing at all. The message is not getting home
Look,
at all.
why don't we just take a look at America, where you have a president who has made light of this matter of COVID? Now, he has made sure it's not the only contributing factor, but has contributed significantly. America is now leading in something it shouldn't be leading in. The number of deaths, the number of infections, anything and negative and bad about COVID is being portrayed in the US of A. The president throws away his masks, makes comments in the same manner that he does, says this and then says the other, and then turns around and says something else. So half the time you're not really sure what it is you're hearing if you follow the conversation. But the consequences are dire. And you have to ask the question, was it necessary? He led by example. Okay, here we have the consequences of that example. So is this what our leaders want to do?
That's what they're doing. If you look at this photo of the deputy president in Chuka in Tharaka Nithi County yesterday, he was at Chuka. He is in his vehicle. He's addressing the people. He's wearing his face mask to some extent. But the crowd, nobody's wearing a face mask. Everybody's trying to gather around, coming close to the vehicle, as close to the vehicle as possible so that they can see their leader. What kind of leadership is this? Then what are you talking about? What is it that this leader is telling us, and how different would it be from any other meeting that we've seen in the country?
By their actions and by their deeds, you shall know them.
You shall know them by their actions and by their deeds.
Yes.
We're coming to that point in time when the president is going to have a meeting with the county officials. They're going to be discussing the response to COVID-19. I have a feeling, we conclude, I have a feeling that they'll focus a lot on what the citizens are not doing and not much on what the government and government officials are doing.
Let's help them. The citizens won't do.
They will be told, the governors will be told, I know ni sisi wenyewe viongozi ambao tunafaa kuongoza. The president has said this more than once. He says this all the time. It is for us to do this. Just so that he ticks the box. Did I tell the people? Yes.
Did I lead by example?
Did I lead by example?
No.
Absolutely not. Did we talk about our capacity and how then we can improve our capacity so that those that end up looking for medical attention in our health facilities are able to get that? They may not discuss a lot of that on Wednesday, and they ought to be discussing what is the government doing, even the cost of treatment. What is the government doing? If indeed Raila can conduct a referendum with 2 billion shillings, we can make him IEBC chairman for the referendum, and then the other money that could have gone into a referendum, like 10 billion, put in healthcare, put in addressing COVID-19. The cost of treatment should be borne by the government. Increasing the number of ICU beds should also be radically done by the government. Increasing access and capacity to acquire PPEs should be a focus of the government. Unless they do all that, Even that meeting on Wednesday. Mudomo too. Anyway, coming to the end of the show, remind us about the chicken.
If the cockroach wants to rule over the chicken, then it must hire the fox as a bodyguard.
Self-explanatory, isn't it?
It is in many ways. There is always a solution to a problem if you really want to look for it. And sometimes the solution is right before you. Sometimes you need to do a little digging to actually find that solution.
Yeah.
And probably find it in the most unlikely of places.
Yeah. And you
Who
can
would think a cockroach and a fox would be friends?
You can go through collaborative ways of actually ensuring
Yes.
that you address a
problem. Yes.
Asante sana for tuning into the Situation Room this morning. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. City Muga, Eric Latif. Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock.